To order, please, and please stand for the Indigenous Land Acknowledgement Statement and the National Anthem. Thank you.
We begin this meeting by acknowledging that Quinte West is on Indigenous land that has been inhabited by Indigenous peoples from the beginning. We thank all the generations of people who have taken care of this land for thousands of years. Long before today, there have been Indigenous peoples who have been the stewards of this place. In particular, we acknowledge the traditional territories of the Anishinaabe, Huron-Wendat, Haudenosaunee, and the Mohawks of the Bay of Quinte First Nation. This territory is covered by numerous treaties. We recognize and deeply appreciate their historic connection to this place. We also recognize the contribution of the Métis, Inuit, and other Indigenous peoples have made, both in shaping and strengthening this community in particular, and our province and country as a whole. This acknowledgement serves as recognition of the contributions and historical significance of Indigenous peoples across Turtle Island and demonstrates our collective commitment to meet the promises and address the challenges of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission within our community.
Interest by Councillor McHugh, yes?
Yes, I don't know if it's going to come up or not, but with regard to the financial report 00172, if there should be any discussions with regard to the Natural History Museum, I'll declare a conflict as Research Castings is a customer of mine.
Thank you. Thank you. So noted. Anyone else? That closed. Okay, now we've got a presentation. I'm going to ask Director Denowden to explain a little more about this, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship. This year we're recognizing our finance staff for the 2024 budget GFOA award. GFOA is an organization for finance officers across North America, and they provide training, education for government finance, and budget best practices for government around transparency and accountability. The award includes 3 independent reviewers who look at our budget book. So they look at the budget process, the capital program, the financial policies, long-range plans, performance measures, and strategic planning. So Quinte West won the award this year, and we are one of 19 municipalities in Ontario out of 444 municipalities that have this award. And you'll see Quinte West named beside municipalities like Guelph, Mississauga, Halton, York, Vaughan. So it's quite a distinguished award and something we should be proud of. So I just want to recognize our staff. We've got them here tonight. We'll have them come up front. So Matt, Hodge, Victoria, and Riley. So last fall, they spent about 3 months working really hard to put this budget book together. A lot of overtime. It's about 150 pages. So together, these 3 wrote a book. And, they didn't go through a lot of training at GFOA. They just kind of read and self-educated. The tools, we didn't give them a fancy software that a lot of these bigger municipalities would have. They simply used things like GDocs and G-Sheets and really just very skilled at using the tools we have. And Communications department isn't here tonight, but I do want to recognize how much they helped. They took a lot of photos for our budget book, made it look good, readable, a lot of visual. You'll notice the capital projects all had visuals, so you could kind of tell what capital projects we were working on, and a lot of editing and public engagement to help us out too. So, yeah, thank you staff for the work you did, and congrats on the award.
Yes, thank you very much. I just want to reassure everyone that no money came with this. So it didn't alleviate any of our, I guess you'd say, deficits and challenges. But again, thank you very much for putting it all together and being as accurate as you are. Every time I ask for money, the answer is the same. I don't have any. But I appreciate that because, you know, we all are in this to try to make things work, and going to jail isn't part of my life, and it's not part of yours either. So congratulations again from all of the council and all the people we represent. Thank you so much. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for being here. And yes, we do have a couple of issues that are going to be handled and dealt with the best of our ability. So first delegation, Deanna Way, Executive Director of Quinte Museum of Natural History, will talk about the annual update and plans. Thank you.
I'm assuming it's the middle button to click?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Amazing. Good afternoon, Mayor Harrison and Council. I am Deanna Way. I am the Executive Director of the Quinte Museum of Natural History. It is a delight and an honor to be back in front of you today and to provide you with an annual update from the museum. Now, before I do that, I just want to take a moment to thank our volunteers, our staff, and our Board of Directors for their ongoing dedication to this museum. As well, a thank you to our supporters, sponsors, and stakeholders, including Research Casting International, Wilkinson and Company, Trenval, FedDev Ontario, Loyalist College, and of course, the City of Quinte West. As well, I'd like to give a shout out to Jennifer Rushlow for the work her and her colleagues put in for the Canada Soccer Toyota National Championships that took place 3 weeks ago. We actually used the museum as a venue space for the referee reception. It was a huge hit, and the feedback from the referees was incredible. It seemed like everyone truly loved it. It was a reminder that this museum is and will continue to be a success in our community. So thank you, Jen. And with that, I have 14 slides in about 10 minutes, so let's get to it. There we go. So I would actually like to start things off with a Google review we received a few weeks back from a Miss Frances O'Connell. She writes, "While on a getaway to Prince Edward County, we decided to check out some of the museums surrounding the area. The Quinte Museum of Natural History is a small place, and we expected to be in and out in 20 minutes. But then Matthew the guide offered us a tour. He turned our 20-minute run-through into millions of years as we watched our planet's first supercontinent drift apart. Imagined the heft of miles-high ice crunching down the land beneath our feet and filling it up with Lake Ontario. Our necks craned to see long-necked dinosaurs stomping through the Cretaceous period, and we cringed to imagine hanging from the jaws of a 30-year-old T-Rex. We hung out with some early whales as they evolved towards a purely aquatic life. And finally, we walked the length of the majestic blue whale, stunned while considering its massive presence. Not bad for an $8 admission fee. Be sure to ask if Matthew is home when you go. He will bring to life a different Earth, a world before our own, long gone but for fossils and your vivid imagination." Now, I only have 2 statements to make on that. First, our museum is home to some of the best volunteers around. So thank you, Matthew. And 2, Francis drove out of Prince Edward County to visit our museum and invest in our community, Quinte West. So we're going to take a step back in time to about this time last year. So on November 1st, 2023, we requested $100,000 from the Natural History Reserve Fund. We allocated $25,000 of that for 2023 operations, and we deferred $75,000 of that to 2024 operations. And I'd like to express my sincere gratitude to Council for passing that motion to release these funds. The support of Council and the City has been invaluable and has allowed us to use these resources wisely and amplify our reach. So how did we put these funds to work? First and foremost, we are investing in relationships, we are investing in community building, and we are investing in partnerships. Whether it be attending events like Science Rendezvous or Apple Fest, presenting at local libraries, hosting local groups like our Probus Clubs, or sharing our space for community fundraising events like Gift from the Heart's Amazing Race. We are proud to be out there cultivating meaningful connections with organizations and groups that make the Bay of Quinte region a great place to live and to visit. In terms of attendance, we are pleased to report that our museum welcomed 12,500 visitors in 2023, with 600 of those being students participating in Ontario curriculum-linked education. This year, despite staffing restraints and a temporary closure, we still welcomed over 4,500 visitors, and that number is still counting. Our stats show that about 55% of our visitors are local from Hastings County, and 45% of that come from elsewhere. We are seeing some growth, and that, combined with our revenue from admissions, gift shop, and small donations, it really underscores our increasing value to this community. Additionally, our partners with corporate sponsors like Research Casting and International and Wilkinson and Company have actually provided over $75,000 of in-kind support to us this year. Which leads me to even more good news, funding announcements. So we are honored to be recipients of the FedDev Tourism Growth Program to the tune of $200,000 to support our 2025 exhibit development. As well, we received an additional $10,000 from Trenval's Seed Program to support our exhibits and our community engagement. And now I'd like to take a moment to share a little bit about myself, because I think it's really essential for Council and our community to understand the leadership that is behind this museum. This past year, I was honored to receive the Promising Leadership Award from the Ontario Museum Association, followed by the Community Champion Award this summer from MP Ryan Williams. Most recently, I joined the Ontario Museum Association as a Director at Large, where I can advocate not only for the Quinte Museum, but for the arts and culture sector as a whole. At heart, I am still a Girl Guide, with a deep sense of duty and responsibility to my community. For over 10 years, I've worked in the arts and culture sector, driven by a passion for sharing knowledge, stories, and engaging with others. Because I truly believe that this is how we grow, we thrive, and we innovate together. Now, some of the challenges we face at the Quinte Museum, especially in funding and revenue generation, are shared by my peers across the entire sector. Arts and culture contributes $27 billion annually to Ontario's GDP. Yet, chronic underfunding has weakened our sector, eroding resilience and perpetuating inequitable work practices, especially in the wake of the pandemic. The Community Museum's operating grant, CMOG, for example, has been closed to new applicants since 2016, and that program hasn't received an increase in funding in over 17 years. This is a provincial and a national issue, and that is why I'm honored to serve as a Director at Large for the Ontario Museum Association. My commitment is to be a strong voice for both our museum and museums across the province, advocating for the support we need to continue enriching our communities. Now, we are determined to achieve our dreams for the future, and to get there, we are focused on 3 key categories. So, our educational programs. We are working to expand our capacity by 30% in the next 2 years. exhibit development. So our goal is, and actually we are actively developing 2 exhibits, which will have launched next year, and we are estimating attracting 15,000 folks annually. And as well, our community engagement. So we are actually working on new initiatives to support alternative learning opportunities so that we can engage and involve our wider community. But what does this actually look like? So we are working diligently to build our capacity as a natural history museum to provide vital community supports and services that our audiences has identified as needs in the Bay of Quinte. And this includes STEAM education, so science, technology, engineering, art, and mathematics, combating the loneliness epidemic, and being a third space, which is a public space that are outside work and home where people can meet and share their interests. We are a gathering space for all ages, and we're turning into a bit of an event venue. As well, we are offering intergenerational experiential learning, and we are encouraging curiosity in the community. And if anyone wants any sources for the items listed above, please don't hesitate to ask for me for them afterwards. Okay, so last year, Councillor Boyce commented about how he's not sure we are going to top the whale exhibit, but here it goes. We've got 2 initiatives. We have the High Arctic exhibit, and that will focus on the biodiversity. And in fact, we are going to be focused on research from students out of the University of Quebec at Rimouski. And our second initiative is Roots of Resilience, where we're going to focus on pollinators, gardening, and farming. And it'll also be a pilot project for our Seed Library initiative. And actually on that note, I just want to say my quick thanks and congratulations to Council for approving a resolution for city staff to apply to be a bee-friendly city. Keep your eye out though, because I imagine the bird-friendly folks are going to come at you next. Okay, so the ask. We have $100,000 left in the Natural History Reserve Fund, and we are proposing that $50,000 of that be released in the first quarter of 2025, and the remaining $50,000 of that be released in the first quarter of 2026. This request is being made to help sustain our momentum and to ensure and to enable us to focus on the key aforementioned priorities, which is educational programming, exhibits, and community engagement. So, looking ahead, we would like to explore possibilities of a structured annual contribution from the City of Quinte West beginning in 2027. The reality is that the Quinte Museum of Natural History is already here, standing as a vital resource and attraction for Quinte West and the entire Bay of Quinte region. This is a place where our community and visitors alike can connect deeply with nature, sparking senses of wonder and responsibility to protect it. We've laid the foundation for something extraordinary, a museum that brings our community together as a hub for learning, curiosity, and action. But to truly reach its full potential, the museum needs all of us to support it. With your commitment, the museum can grow as an authority of environmental stewardship, a third space for learning and gathering, and a source of pride for Quinte West. Together, we can transform this vision into an enduring legacy for our region, a natural attraction that reflects our shared values and commitments to a vibrant, sustainable future. So to recap, our request is for $50,000 to be released from the reserve fund in 2025 in the first quarter, the remaining $50,000 to be released in the first quarter of 2026, and a discussion for annual contribution beginning in 2027. Our intention remains to find a permanent home or a bigger next step until a permanent home can be built for QMNH, but we acknowledge that we still have some work to do before that can happen still. And I just want to thank you all for your time and your ongoing support in helping this museum thrive for today and for generations to come.
Thank you very much, Deanna. You almost ran out of breath, but you did well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any questions or comments? Councillor O'Neill.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I've been very consistent in the past that for this kind of money, you have not provided any financial projections on the viability of this. We've given the museum $330,000 to date, and you're not even telling us if you'll be viable next year. You're just asking for the money, which I don't agree with. And the reserve fund is not the museum's, it's taxpayers' money. So for that money to come out, I still feel you need to give us projections that that's going to be a viable operation, not just ask. For false $5,000 grants, we've asked for that. You emailed me last year, and I asked you for projections, and you never got back to me. Like, we're going to have a real tough year for the budget, and I think, like, we can't be giving money out when you're not even giving us the information we asked for.
Yes, I understand. I will say that we were, I was the sole staff member for an entire, about 6-7 months of this past year. So we are running, flat out, making sure that our museum is open to the public. We are working on those projections, and they will be ready by the end of the year.
Even the financial statements for 2023, your admission revenue is $68,000, and your wages went from $108,000 in 2022 to $209,000. So I'd like to see if you're going to be viable before I vote to say yes, because I don't think you've given us the information to do that.
One of the things I would like council to know is that fundamentally museums are community service, and therefore they are a bit of an expense. It is unfeasible for our admissions revenue to actually support the entire expenditure that we have per year. It does eat out of a good chunk, so our projections are to do a third, a third, a third, so being able to support at least a third of our own revenue generation, a third of that coming through donations, and a third of that coming through grants and funding opportunities. Most municipalities, in fact, support their arts and culture sector. I would say the city of Kingston is a really good example of that. They have operating grants. They are, I believe, they have the largest number of museums per capita either in the province or the entire nation. And they actually provide these supports for museums because they fundamentally understand how important they are to the community. So realistically, we are a nonprofit entity. We will not be profitable. We are doing our best to support that, but we've only been in operation since March of 2022. And this community, we are still trying to collect that data in order to make more accurate projections as we move forward.
I'm repeating myself.
Okay.
I don't know that you're going to be viable because you haven't given me that information.
What does viability look to you, Councillor O'Neill?
Okay, all right.
I've got the floor. You can speak after I'm done. Thank you. Yes. Okay. Viable to me means you got 100,000 coming in and you have 400,000 going out. You can't sustain viability. I want to know, if we give you 50,000, will you be able to operate next year
Yes.
at a break even? Well,
Okay.
you haven't told us that.
Let's defer that question, and we'll ask Director Denown to work with you to put it together and get what we need.
Sure. We would
Thank you.
love to be able to support,
Okay. Thank
support
you.
this for you.
Thank you very much. And I've been there. It's fantastic, the work that's been done and is continuing. Yeah, you've done a great job. Yeah, out of some piece of bone from something, you make it into, yeah. So I give you a lot of credit, Peter as well. So yeah, we'll do our best to put things together for us. Councillor Freeman, yes, you go ahead, Councillor Freeman.
Thank you very much. When Deanna was invited here today, she was invited to give an overview. And I agree that before we get a major amount of money from the city, we have to do all our homework, get everything updated, so we can show the projections for what our museum can do. That is not what she was asked to do today, although I wasn't quite sure why she was coming today with just what she had. But that is what she was asked to bring today, I assure you. And what we're looking for now is $50,000 for next year to start putting those together, because that doesn't come cheap. Getting all those projections and the companies that do that, none of it is. And if by the time that is done, we will know whether we're looking for a huge museum or something small, a little bit than we have now, or just what we should be doing. So that's why today I'm going to pass. And this is again, speaking to the CAO, for a motion to release $50,000 for next year, and next year only, and then we will see whether we are going to be viable after that. That's my motion.
Okay, that's a motion. I need a seconder for the motion. Councillor Boyce seconds the motion. Any further comments?
I'd like a recorded vote.
Okay, any further comments? Councillor Sharp?
Yes, thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to acknowledge your presentation, and we do look forward to still having those numbers because I do think they're valuable. But I did want to point out your strategic plan that was done for 2023 to 2028, and it speaks to sustainability, and I do think that's important.
Yeah.
But I like that you've done some business planning, some strategic planning, and I've read this thoroughly, and I do wish you well.
Thank you.
And I look forward to those numbers in these other exhibits. And I will support Councillor Freeman's motion because we have that reserve, and it was identified for this particular purpose, to give the museum this opportunity as per the motion. But I do think it's important to give us those numbers, and we look towards that sustainability with you. But I'm impressed with your strategic plan and the plans that you have going forward, and still the energy and the excitement. I also like that you're using the facility or the museum for venue, as a venue for other partnerships. And I think we need to be doing more of that. And thank you very much.
Councillor Boyce?
Thank you, and I'm certainly looking forward to the next couple of exhibits too. The whale one was, as you mentioned, it was unbelievable, and I took guests to it, and it was incredible. And I think you hit the nail on the head. Like, I mean, I don't want to be living in a community that doesn't support the arts and culture. And I sat for many years when I was a councillor in Belleville on the Glamorgan National Historic Site, and you know, we didn't break even, but it wasn't expected. It's like so many other things. Like, I mean, our roads don't break even, and we're not expected to put toll roads on them and things like this. So it's so important that we don't neglect the arts and culture in this community. So I'm going to support the 50,000 in this as well. And I, like I say, I look forward to the two new exhibits.
Thank you. I too support the arts and culture from a councillor standpoint and also from a personal standpoint. I just don't know why we're voting on this prematurely. To Councillor O'Neill's point, there's no harm in waiting for any kind of financials and then voting on this at the next budget meeting. I'm not sure why the vote has to be done tonight. I would like to also see those financials.
Councillor Card?
Thank you, Your Worship, and I would thank the Executive Director for the presentation. And I also look forward to the exhibits next year. But I think similar to Councillor Katsavosa's comments, I would be interested in seeing the financials, and I think it is very fair and important to have an honest conversation about, as you were mentioning, with the one-third, one-third, one-third. I think that's an important context and discussion to have. And anyway, I look forward to, even if this motion were to fail, to hopefully take it up again at budget and receive some financials, because the truth is that there are so many asks that we have, and to support arts and culture, even just where our allocation that this council does within the arts and culture community in Quinte West is obviously super important and a difficult question to answer. So anyway, thank you for coming.
Coming this way. Councillor O'Neill?
I'm confused how members of council can vote on something they don't know the background on. I think we need to wait until the projections are provided to make sure that it is a viable organization.
Now, am I allowed to say anything in response?
Well, we'll come back to you. Okay, thank you. Councillor Stedall?
Thank you, Worship. I will not be in agreement with the motion tonight. I agree with Councillor O'Neill. I need to see the financials. I need to see what the projections are going to be for the next couple of years. I realize the 50,000 has been set aside. I also realize we have a bigger budget that we need to deal with first, or at least in conjunction with, and I think that the intent tonight was just to hear the presentation as to what was, what the museum is doing, and then we would actually make a decision on the budget as a whole package, and so I will not be supporting the motion.
Councillor Armstrong?
I agree with Councillor Stedall. I was wondering what your projections for the 2027 beyond ask is. Do you have numbers on that yet?
Not yet. So we are really trying to redefine the direction of this museum. As you know, I am actually the third executive director to sit in this. So when you're sort of a nonprofit startup organization, things change all the time. And it really changed the game when we got the initial FedDev grant of $500,000. It took us into an entirely new direction, and a lot of that we are still trying to figure out, which is why we published our strategic plan in order to kind of provide a basis for that. And we published our annual report, which I believe was given to all of you. So yes, there's still a lot more planning to do because we are just trying to understand exactly how it kind of takes a life of its own when you have visitors coming in the space. They're providing their own feedback. So yeah, we are working on a plan. This is why we are asking for that drawdown. Realistically, we need a bit about that 2-year runway to sort this out because this is a very new entity for our region. And yes, we have the Air Force Museum, and those numbers are very helpful to gauge our predictions, but we are also, just down Dufferin, and we're a little bit harder to find, so we're still trying to understand the visitor traffic, the flow of that. And I'd also just like to point out, too, there's the whole economic impact side of this that we're not actually discussing. So when you think about all of these visitors coming into their town, whether they spend $20, $50 because they go to Tomaso's for lunch afterwards, we're always encouraging people to go spend in this community. There's that, and based on some of the models that I've been working on, and I can't say verbatim like this is exactly the number, but it's well over $1 million to $2 million of economic impact in the last year and a half alone. So if that is important to you, I think it's also something to consider that, yes, we are requesting $50,000, but think about how much money Quinte West is getting back through people spending in our town.
Thank you very much. Why don't we, go ahead.
I don't think anybody on this council is against the museum. I want to make that pretty clear. I think everybody would agree to that. I think the question is when to support this, not
Yes.
if. Okay? And are you taking credit for all of that $1 million?
I'd say we are contributing to it. I'd say our museum could almost account for about $1 million at this point, but the number of tourism that we have, so we are over 32,000 people that have come through the space since 2022, March of 2022.
Thank you. Why don't we simply pass a motion to defer until we get the information that we...
Can she amend her motion?
I have a motion on, do I have to defeat that motion, or can I take...
No, through you, a motion to defer supersedes the original motion.
Okay, so if somebody is willing to do that, Councillor Armstrong moves.
I'll second it.
Thank you. Okay, all in favor of deferral? Thank you very much. Okay, well, thank you very much, Deanna. We really, I know you're doing a great job there. I've been there and seen it. So, and you have one particular dinosaur, and I can't tell you the full name, but there was a Jane on it.
Yes, Jane the T-Rex.
Yeah, and my wife's name is Jane. She's not a dinosaur, so it's okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I just found it amusing when I was there, that's all. So, but thank you very much.
I appreciate all your time and all of your feedback. Thank you.
Yeah, okay.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes,
just before we leave this, just for clarification, I understand the motion to defer, but is there an additional part to that motion, defer, looking for a time frame for information to come back? I'm just looking for some clarification on.
well, can we not have it for the next council meeting? Is that possible?
I
Can
would
we
say.
do the budget meetings?
Well, the money's already put aside, but if you get the information, then we can look at the information that's being requested. If it's supports what we're trying to do, fine.
Right, but I think the question would be more to the lady from the museum on what time frame she could put some information together to come back to council.
Well, why don't I leave it up to you to work with them, and when you get it, bring it back to us. Is that okay? Yes.
Through your worship, I'd like to defer it if we could until our regular budget meetings, which this is our first of three. I understand, like the December 4th and 5th are our next ones, and I believe that this is a whole financial package that we should be looking at, and so I would suggest that we would defer it until we're making those decisions, probably on December 5th.
Okay. It's fine with me. But everybody else in agreement with that deferral suggestion? Okay, all in favor of the deferral according to, okay, thank you, carried. Thank you very much. Okay. Next one is Colleen, Rhonda Bateman, Chief Administrative Officer, Lower Trent.
Colleen Dupuy.
Pardon? Did I miss one?
Dupuy.
Oh, Colleen Dupuy, sorry. Chair, National Air Force Museum of Canada. Is Colleen here? No? You were here and,
No, video. Is there video from Colleen?
oh, okay.
There's
There's-
Keever. Yeah.
Well, he certainly doesn't look like Colleen to me. We love, we love Jennifer too, so it's okay. Glad to see you. Okay. We got a video? Go ahead. Thank you.
Very quickly, Your Worship Council, thank you for allowing us to be here today. I know the audience have the Executive Director of the National Art Museum of Canada, Kevin Windsor, as well as the Chair of the Museum Foundation Board. Sorry, the Museum Board, not the Foundation, just the Museum Board, Susan Scarborough, and they're here to be here in person and make sure, quite frankly, I don't screw this up. I will start by saying I'm very cognizant of the fact that we represent another need, another museum coming to council seeking funding. And after the last one, I'm not sure I want to be that person, but that's where we're at. I'm very cognizant of the budget pressures at the municipal level in Quinte West, and we recognize and acknowledge them. And I think by way of starting, I would say that the museum is extremely appreciative of the support that the city of Quinte West has given to the museum over the multiple years. And this is really about understanding where we might continue to partner together to make the museum an even better attraction than it already is. The museum presentation has not changed at all from last year. In the interests of saving time, I propose that I simply provide a quick update and then get right to a discussion that I would encourage Susan and Kevin to assist me with, as compared to stepping through the conversation or the presentation slide by slide by slide, if that's amenable to the council.
Yes, that's fine. Go right ahead. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Your Worship. I guess I will just start by saying, to build on the last discussion, that there is a recognition that museums are crucial to capturing culture and history, and how the current citizens of a society or a community learn from the past and relate that to the future. And certainly the National Air Force Museum of Canada has always been about telling the story of the Royal Canadian Air Force and its incredible link to the local community in Quinte West. I will state that last year's ask was seeking capital funding from the city of Quinte West to assist with a capital expansion program in the museum, now that they have also received a Lancaster, which is now on display down at Base 31 in Picton. That remains our goal, to expand the museum to be able to house the Lancaster alongside the Halifax, which would make it the only museum in the world that has two restored aircraft of those types, which is not insignificant. The museum, for your awareness, continues to grow in visitorship. It's probably going to approach 40,000 this year. Year over year to date, it is sitting at about a 20% increase in visitorship since last year. And if we use the Statistics Canada numbers, even assuming all of these people are simply day visitors, at 40,000 visitors a year, that represents a cumulative net economic impact to the local area of about $3.2 million a year, assuming that everyone spends about $80 a day as a day visitor. So it's not insignificant, to the point of the previous presenter about the economic spin-off that these attractions have. I do think they are a worthwhile investment. The ask itself is for $500,000 over 4 years, or sorry, $500,000 in each of the next 4 years, for a total of $2 million. Recognizing the budget pressures the city of Quinte West has, I would modify the ask to say that the National Air Force Museum of Canada would be most appreciative and receptive to any potential capital grant you can give to the museum over the next 4 years, or even over the next year, There is a myriad of work that needs to be done at the museum, whether it be updating exhibits, whether it be ensuring the aircraft parked outside continue to be viable and preserved in terms of weathering, et cetera, et cetera. And I would say that what we have put before the council here today is an ask to be considered during your ongoing budget deliberations, which I recognize are difficult and require you to make some priorities and choices. I will say the National Air Force Museum of Canada is a stalwart of the community. It continues to be important to the Royal Canadian Air Force and 8 Wing, and we value the partnership that the museum has with the community and 8 Wing. And with that, I'll throw it over to you, Your Worship, and offer the opportunity to Susan and Kevin to build upon what I've said. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, and we both know the project that the Lancasters at base 31 was a fantastic project and so well completed. I'm going to ask Kevin and Susan if they would come up and add to anything that you've said, please.
Thank you, Colin, and good afternoon. Nice to see you and councillors, everybody. It's nice to see you all, and thank you for listening to us this afternoon. I just wanted to qualify a little bit about what Colin said about our beautiful Lancaster being in base 31. When we acquired that Lancaster from Edmundston, New Brunswick, it was under the agreement with them that it would be restored, which, as you know, it has been beautifully restored. However, that it would also be undercover, and by that I mean not just a shroud, but a proper building that it be put into. That was how our agreement with Base 31 came about. They were incredibly supportive of us, and we worked with an agreement with them to house it, but we told them it would be 5 years. So we have 5 years in which to have a campaign to build this addition on the museum, to bring the Lancaster back home to where it belongs in our museum here in Trenton for everybody to see. Kevin, you can go ahead.
I don't have much to add to that. So the project, there was 50 volunteers that worked on the Lancaster over a seven-year period. COVID shut down the restoration for about 18-20 months. But they came back, they doubled their effort. The restoration project, total restoration project was about $225,000 for the museum to restore the Lancaster. That was all raised through private donations to the museum, specifically for the Lancaster project.
And you had many volunteers, and they worked tirelessly, and everything that was, I guess you'd say, replaced, put in place, was, done with authentic material.
Yeah, so the outside restoration is complete, the inside not. So we estimate there's another further 2 to 3 years of restoration work on the inside of the aircraft. We're working with the Aerospace Telecommunications Engineering Support Squadron, ATES, Loyalist College, and private companies on making 3D printed dials for the inside of the aircraft. So, as you know, parts that are 80, 85 years old are getting harder and harder to find and more expensive. So we're looking at a 3D print model that we can put some dials in some holes right now for the inside until we can source original parts from overseas or from people's basements or trophy rooms.
Any comments, Councillor Armstrong?
You have the Ad Astra program, correct, for people buy commemorative stones. Are you linking that up with the Lancaster project? In other words, would you like to donate further to this? Or do you have some kind of online campaign specifically for this build?
So the Ad Astra program, those are donations that go into the operation and maintenance of the the museum, where the capital campaign is a restricted fund straight to capital. So we don't mix the two of them, just so that the operating money is stable, or as stable as a museum can get with that coming in, which is why the capital ask is different.
But you have an online campaign at least for people to donate directly to the build?
Yes.
And what other source?
All I want to add is that this is very much a separate and distinct
Right.
campaign in terms of raising capital for the museum expansion. So we're trying really, really hard to keep this clean and separated so that we are able to demonstrate to you and anyone else who's supporting the museum where exactly the dollars are going and what they're being used for.
Okay.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention, do you remember, Mr. Mayor, when we went to Miramichi in 2017? The city of Edmundston, New Brunswick was trying to decide what to do with this bomber because they didn't want it anymore. So I dragged my wife over there to look at it because who knew where it was going to go after that? So I feel like it's following me around. So anyhow, keep up the good work.
I just want to remind you one comment that General Keever made. Once it's back in our building, we will be the only museum in the world that has 2 restored bombers as they will be. That's something that Quinte West needs to be really proud of, not only our museum and not only base Trenton, but
Yes.
this is going to be an incredible feat when it happens.
Yes, you're right. You're absolutely correct. And it's incredible the work that was done to put it and make it like it is. Just, yeah. Anyone else? Councillor Reid, go ahead.
Thank you very much. I don't think there's anybody in this room or in the city of Quinte West that doubts that this is a wonderful addition to the city of Quinte West. My question is, are you, for this project, are you applying for any grants? Are you doing any fundraising to try to get money for this?
The short answer is yes. To any and all funding sources would be the short answer. I think any funding that the city of Quinte West would see to providing the museum on this capital campaign over the next 3 or 4 years would be dedicated to supporting their broader fundraising effort. It would be dedicated to critical first steps in actually building the expansion, such as finalizing design, all of those types of things, concurrent with the foundation going out and looking at all funding sources to include grants, public funding from the federal level, provincial level. Yes, in short, there is not a tree we don't intend to shake to seek funding for this expansion.
Thank you. I'm just wondering about smaller fundraising events like car rallies, dinners, you name it. The list is endless. That's what my question was.
It is, and I think our challenge is that the scope and scale of the expansion is such that what we're wrestling with is striking the right balance between finding large sources of funding versus running a lot of small events that don't generate the type of volume of funding we need for the expansion. As you know, the Foundation of the Museum are very much a community-based organization, and there is finite capacity to generate fundraising through a lot of activities. So we're finding we need to be very strategic and very focused in how we're going to target fundraising activities because of the size of the fundraising requirement for the expansion.
Okay. Anyway, Councillor Stidle.
Thank you, Worship. I guess my question is about the financials. So similar to the question that we asked the last museum, is that is there and I apologize if this was given to us previously or last year, the $8.5 million that you're trying to raise in order to build this. I'm just wondering if there's like a project summary and with estimates as to other funding. You're only asking us for a portion of it, so it would be nice just to see the full financial picture as to what's expected. And also, I think we asked the question last year about being able to get receipts for museum entry. Like anyone who comes into the museum right now, all of those, I think it was mentioned last year that money, when people come in to pay admissions, does not go back to the museum. It goes somewhere else. And
no, that's not correct, Kevin.
Right.
So the admission fees to the museum and the gift shop sales directly come back to the operating funds of the museum. Event revenue is the money that does not come back to the museum.
Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you. So,
Okay.
and then I guess my first question was in regards to financials there will be something? Okay.
Colin's nodding his head, so that's, yeah.
We can absolutely provide you with more detail as required, and like I say, if you have a specific ask of us, I think, we'll read this into the record here, and we will work to ensure that we can get you what you need to facilitate deliberations in your budget meetings in December and for disbursement.
Okay. Anyone else? Anything else? Anyone? Okay, well, thank you very much, folks. I appreciate the work you're doing. You're too young to retire, sir, so I'm glad to see you're still vibrant and working hard and staying out of the kitchen where, some of us don't belong. So, but again, thank you very much. I really enjoy what you have there and the work you've done. And where's our guy that really knows a lot about what we're talking about, Noel Fudge?
I have not seen Noel since June, not
No?
since the unveiling.
Wow, I hope
So
with him
at
Saturday.
at the unveiling of the Lancaster, we were lucky enough to have three air crew and one ground crew member who actually served on KB-882 with 408 Squadron who were in attendance.
You saw Noel?
Yeah, Noel's a good friend of mine, and he serves with me on the St. George's Cemetery Board, and single-handedly looks after our war memorial graves that we have there. We have quite a section there, and he's in great health, and don't mind telling you, he can outwork me any day of the week. So great man, great.
I knew that. No, he's so knowledgeable and so able to tell you every flight he took and where he landed and when he took off. Like he's what, 97, 90s, yeah, and he can still tell you almost what day and year he landed in Australia and so on. So just a fantastic guy, and he really loves helping with the museum and putting things back together and making obviously sure everything is precisely completed, and we thank him profusely for all of that. So, and I thank you too. So we'll certainly be looking at things carefully as we have to, and yeah, the hill just seems to become steeper. But thank you very much.
We're going to climb it, though.
Yeah, we'll be able to climb it. We hope so. Yes. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor?
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, Council.
Thank you.
Pardon?
If council's prepared to consider the ask, we should get a motion to refer it to the next special council budget meeting.
Okay. Okay. I have a motion to consider their ask. Councillor Allier, second by Councillor Sharp. Comments or questions? All in favor? Carried. Thank you very much. Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, next, Rhonda Bateman, Chief Administrative Officer, Lower Trent Conservation, and you're going to talk about your budget. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks very much, Mr. Mayor and Council, for inviting me today. This is our draft budget, and so it's out for consultation. That's why you had it in your package, and your feedback is, of course, always important. There we go. So tonight I'm going to talk about the budget subcommittee, the facts of our budget, highlights, and the levy in general, and our next steps. So this year we had a budget subcommittee that was made up of our vice chair, Jean Brahani from Trent Hills, director Bobby Wright from Municipality of Brighton, Jeff Wilden also from Brighton, and we had director Sanford as our alternate from Center Hastings. And staff members, of course, myself and our new corporate services manager. So the budget subcommittee met this summer, twice in August and once in early September. We went through all of our expenses and revenues and talked about our requirements. And we brought forward 3 options for our budget subcommittee, and they I'm not going to quote it directly, but it was like all the way from a Cadillac to a bicycle. So the option that was brought forward to our board was option 2, that was right in the middle. So the preliminary draft budget was presented to the board at our September meeting with a proposed, and don't panic over this, 22% levy. There's discussion and a motion for staff to find potential savings, of course. So we had 2 more committee meetings, October 4th and 7th, and we did manage to decrease that, that levy through potential savings, which I'll talk about in a minute. So here's some of our budget facts. You know, we're a service delivery organization, and 70% of our staffing, or 70% of our budget is basically staffing, and the rest is capital and operations. We looked at a 3% CPI this year. Our calendar year for CPI is August to July. Some of the reasons are increases through minimum wage increases, of course, the new CPP enhancement, everybody's going to have to deal with that as well, and COLA, we looked at 3%. So where we sit now with our proposed budget is an overall staffing increase of 8.3%, which includes a new staff member, operations at 7.6%, and our capital stays, we're decreasing our capital spending, but not our capital levy. So what we're doing for that is delaying a few projects and financing. We're looking at financing a vehicle instead of buying one to keep our reserves in place. So some of our expenditure highlights are we're looking at a new position under conservation lands. And again, COLA is a factor, and we have about 8 staff due for merits this year. Program operations, the increase is mostly due to CPI and conservation land materials, and increases in taxes and insurance. And capital, again, we're delaying a few projects and making them multi-year. So our revenue sources are as follows. Provincially, it hasn't changed for 5 years. It's 68,831. Federally, we're looking for an increase in what we get for our students, basically, students or young people for the summer. Of course, municipal levies and our municipal agreements, fees and charges, that is self-earned revenue, administered programs, which is, part of our programs that we run that are not paid by levy, but we get operational funding for that. And surplus or reserves, we're looking at surplus of 80,000. That's some of the surplus we've identified. So, budget revenue highlights. Again, we haven't had a change in provincial funding since 2019. We have not been able to change our revenue planning and permit fees. There is, the province has frozen our fees for the last 2 years. We're hoping, against hope, that they open them up again this year. That would be amazing. And we had a decrease in source protection funding from the Ministry of the Environment and Conservation Parks. We are increasing our FTE in conservation lands, and we've identified surplus funds from interest income from this year. And we had a timing delay in our IT implementation this year, so we're able to save some money through that, about $50,000. So we'll be putting that towards next year. Okay, and our levy funding. So, as I said before, we're not increasing capital levy. We will be reviewing our asset management plan next year, and I'm not sure how the results of that are going to come out, but it was done 4 years ago when things were a lot cheaper. I'm not saying we're going to increase it, but we'll see where it's going to be allocated and maybe change that way. The so the increase overall in general levy is 157,666 for our 7 municipalities. And what does our levy cover? So basically 67,000 for staff wages and benefits, for the conservation land stewardship technician, 24,000 for CPP requirements, 14K in merits, and 43,000 increase in the conservation lands budget. The reason that operations budget is going up is that it's been overspent for the past 2 years. They look after all of our vehicle repairs and building repairs, and we've had some major repairs recently. So that has been playing into that. So we thought we'd just increase it so that we're not in the red on our conservation lands budget anymore. And again, COLA and CPI at 3%. So there's the apportionment. Quinte West is there. Your apportionment, according to the province, is at 42.75% of our entire budget. So the increase in levy is $65,706, and the increase in Category 2 and 3 programs will be $6,470. So the majority of the increase in the Category 2 and 3 is due to the installation of a salary line in the private stewardship and staff salary. So the conservation lands position is 80% from levy, and 20% will be under stewardship, private land stewardship. And this is a position we asked for last year, and the board, because we had such a large increase last year, the board, we brought it back to the board for this year. So if we do get that position, I can confidently offer our assistance to the Natural History Museum for biodiversity partnerships. And so I wanted to compare apples and apples for you. That we are required to follow regulation for our levy requests from the province. The province provides us with assessment data. The assessment data has population data in it as well, and it all starts at MPAC, but the way the allocations are calculated through our regulation, the assessment is not the same as our municipalities actually have. So I contacted all of our municipalities to ask what the assessment was for last year so we can compare apples and apples. So under the current value assessment for Quinte West for operations and capital, our cost is $11.55 per $100,000 of assessment. So that's 0.012%. Using the census population data, the levy data, the data of the levy is $13.69 per person, or $32 per household. So I have had a conversation with the M&R this last week to talk about their out-of-date assessments and whether they would consider across the board for all 36 CAs looking at a change. And there's a lot of new staff there, so they're not aware of why things were the way they were before. So if they do look at it and use your own assessment data that's provided to you from MPAC, I can confidently say that your assessments will be going down because they've really increased. There's a over $600 million dollar difference in what I get and what you have as an assessment. So I'm looking forward to having more conversations with them and pushing that forward. It would affect some of our other municipalities in an opposite direction, but not to the same extent. So as I said, we are in comment periods, and I'm doing my annual dog and pony show. So I'm to present comments to the board for discussion on December 12th. That is when we are hopefully having our final vote on the budget. And I'll bring your comments back. I'm going to be bringing comments back to our November meeting as well. So any comments that you provide will be going back in November. And then the board will decide whether we're to make changes or to approve the draft budget.
Okay, thank you very much, Ronnie. Any questions, comments? Anyone? Councillor Sharp?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Ms. Bateman, for your presentation. And I always find it frustrating, you're mandated by the province and you haven't had any additional funds for 30 years? Anyway, I just wanted to ask, I know it's a very lean budget that you work with. The position that you're asking for through the board to Lower Trent Conservation, the conservation position, can you tell us a little bit about what the function is of that position, please?
Yes, thank you. We have 2 full-time employees who look after conservation lands. They, one's being a supervisor and one being a technician. And in the summertime, we get students and they help do all the work, but all the background work, any research, any requests for, looking for grant money and that sort of thing, we don't have anyone to do that. So this position would be an ecologist type position and someone who could also do the groundwork in our conservation lands. So they would help identify areas for regeneration projects and actually look for the funding to get those done. Because we could come to councils and ask for that, but what we've traditionally done is go out and get some grant funding. And honestly, most of the grant funding does not include staff time, so we need a person there to do that. They would be looking for grants, and they would also be doing 20% of their job would be private land stewardship. We had to give up private land stewardship this year, except for our native plant sale. So we participate in the 50 Million Trees program and a whole bunch of other programs. We offer assistance with people who want to naturalize their shoreline and stuff. We couldn't do any of that last year. We just didn't have the staff time or allocation. When the province changed our staffing, or not our staffing, but our categories of service, we did not have a person available to do those jobs because they fall under category 3. So.
Thank you. Anyone else? Councillor Ollier?
Yes, thank you very much, Rhonda, for your presentation. And as Councillor Reid and I said on the board, I know we've gone through, since the first presentation, a hack and slash and to try to bring it down to a reasonable number that we think we could sell to not only this council, but our other 6 other members that's set there. We're in the same position there as the city is. Everything is costing more, and a lot of our equipment out there is wearing out too. We need another tractor. It's probably 20 years old and you're having problems. You didn't get into that, but some of the other vehicles, you've been very, I guess, conservative with what you're spending over the last few years. And you reiterated certainly the biggest problem. The other partner in this is this province, who has cut us 48% back in 19. And I know you and I went when the present day, not the present day as a finance minister was, but we went to Wellington to express our case, why they would cut us. And even prior to that, they never changed the levy. And the mayor knows, he was a chair back then for about 24 years. It stayed the same. And then since then, it's just gone down, down, down. And guess why? It gets downloaded to the municipalities and the local taxpayer again. So they're a shirking, I say, member that and partner in this. And if they want us to still function, they should be, coming up to the bar at least to help with some of the things. I think in the past we had a tough year last year, and I know the budget wasn't any easier then, and it's not going to be any easier now. I think we approved in principle the draft to send through, and I will say I will vote. I can't speak for Mrs. Reid, but I think she and I are of the same feeling. We'll vote whatever our council directs us to do. I certainly have some personal feelings. I know you're struggling, and but I have to take my direction from the council. But I just want you to know, for my colleagues here, we've gone through couple heated meetings, I guess, in some sense, to get this down to a reasonable number, but it certainly can't be zero. And nothing gets cheaper every day, unfortunately, and the operating costs. And I really like to chastise the provincial government for not being there and a partner with us and provide the work. So I leave it with our council members here. I know we got a full draft of the draft, and we'll probably be dealing with it when we get down to near the end of, I guess, into December, when we have to look at the final numbers. And so we won't be voting until December the 12th, so that'll give us some time. But anyway, I thank you for your presentation.
Anyone else? Any other? Councillor Quinte?
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. And thanks, Rhonda, for your presentation and the hard work from your team. I sit on the Quinte Conservation Board that has, multiple municipalities to deal with and a lot of the same issues that you're dealing with. I believe that Quinte Conservation may have some more staff to help out. And I find with many organizations that the city trusts that the staffing, like yourself and your team, are dedicated professionals. And they understand they aren't going to get a big bonus at the end of the year. They do it because they love their work and they love their, how they're giving their knowledge to the municipalities and the citizens and trying to make people understand and realize conservation is important because we're dealing with water. And we all like to drink water. We kind of need it. And then we want the water to go where the water's supposed to go, and we can't block it or stop it from doing those things because that just creates other problems. And I do support your work and will be supporting when we get down to doing the voting later on. I will be supporting that we continue to support our conservation authorities. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Anyone else? Any other comments or questions? Councillor O'Neill.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you for your report. You gave the overall increase, you gave Quinte West overall increase, because I was disappointed with Quinte Conservation. They didn't give an overall increase. They didn't give the increase for Quinte West, but you provided what the information we needed, and thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you very much, and I can just tell you that when I served on the board, the provincial support was $333,000, and it sometimes went from $333,000 a dollar plus or a dollar minus. That was what happened, and we obviously have picked it up since then because the province has also decreased the amount of support. So, and I have I have previously asked some of our directors if the city could take on this work and do it for less money than what you're doing, and the answer is no. So you're doing a good job, and we appreciate the work you're doing, and just keep at it. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, I'm at public input. Public input. Anybody for public input? Please come up, state your name, and we'll listen to you. Try to listen to you.
Hello, Joel Fox, 568 Fox Road. I just wanted to come to talk about the, I think there was in one of those documents, they were talking about the priority score that you guys are going to have. And there was a line in there that talked about how a project will have a higher priority score if it's got funding from the provincial or federal government. And I just wanted to sort of say why I think that's not a good thing. There's two reasons. One, is because, as a taxpayer who pays sales tax, income tax, all the taxes, it doesn't really matter whether it comes out of my right pocket or my left pocket. But more than that, the reason is because it's never free, even if it's 100% funded by other levels of government. If somebody bought me a $1,000 TV for free, that is a free thing. But if I have to replace that $1,000 TV when it reaches its end of life, then it's not free because it requires an obligation in the future. And so I don't think there's really any city assets that don't have that obligation attached to them. So just, for example, Bain Park, I don't know if it's fully funded by other levels of government or just mostly, but let's say it's 100% funded. The day that we get it, we have to start planning for the day that we replace it. And so you have to consider setting aside money for when it gets replaced. So even if you get it for free, it still increases the amount of tax that you should be collecting every year. So anyways, I just wanted to say that I don't think that priority score should be weighted at 15%. And your finance department, your asset management department is just punching well above their weight. I mean, these documents are really cool. I love to nerd out over them. And yeah. And I have a habit of coming here and recommending books to you guys, so I'm going to keep up the tradition. And this one, Strong Towns, I didn't write it or anything. I don't get any kickbacks. It's just a really good book. And it specifically is sort of about the issues you guys are having with your infrastructure deficit. It kind of gets into how cities get into that and how you can kind of help get yourself out of it. So anyways, thank you.
Come on up. Next.
Hello, John Van Heusen, a Quinte West resident. You all probably know me by now, so I'll keep this one short. But I'm going to speak to the upcoming approval of the development charges bylaw. It is still my opinion as a taxpayer in the city of Quinte West that there's more work to be done on what that development charge should look like, what the level should be. We realize that it should increase as an industry, but also as taxpayers, when you look at that $450 million capital costs campaign that we're going to be committed to here if this is approved, and you look at the $260 million that development charges will apply to, there's still that $150 to $165 million that needs to come from the existing tax base. Otherwise, the $265 million in development charges doesn't get unlocked. And I think that we need to come up with a fee that makes sense for us all. And even though we have studies that say specifics, there's still studies that we can amend and we can amend together. We don't really feel heard as an industry in terms of what we think that should be. And we really want you to consider delaying any decision on this and allowing us, again, I'm going to ask for the ability to have that input and to come up with a fee that makes sense. There's a lot of people who have been talking to me throughout the past weeks of business people in the area who are now reconsidering their businesses because the increases alone, when you look at just square footage costs to your commercial developments, you're going to be so far out ahead against Belleville, against all the surrounding communities, that these projects no longer have any kind of viability. So you'll be cutting off commercial development, industrial development in the city, and you'll be hindering the cost of affordable housing across the board. 150% is too much of an increase, and I get it, we can spin studies that say, yeah, we need to raise this, but we can also come together with a plan that says something that's affordable. And I think, a development charge of $30,000 a unit is probably something we should be looking at, not $37,000 a unit. And I think there's still other nuances to the development charge study that are going to hurt the city a lot more than benefit the city. And so I really ask that you would reconsider that. And as an association, representing the association here, even if the bylaw gets approved and stuff, there are still ways that we can try to affect change on this bylaw, and those are things that we will be looking at as an association. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you. Who's next? Come on up. Who's next?
Hi, I'm Tom McAvoy with MGA Development and also a commercial realtor in Belleville, Quinte West, Prince Edward County. I was also the agent selling industrial park for Prince Edward County for a number of years, so I've dealt with the municipal process, development fees, and so on. And I guess I'm concerned at what the increase is for commercial and industrial, industrial specifically, because we're talking about from a complete exemption of development fees to $192 per square meter. So I've talked to some people who are looking at building significant amount of square footage in Quinte West, and they don't have a building permit yet, 300,000 square feet. This project is going to get canceled if you put through this amount of development fee, because they will go elsewhere. So it causes me concern. Here in the West End, you've got a lot of things that you want to see get developed, and feasibility is, I'm not sure what you think developers make on margins, but when we're adding maybe 7-8% to a commercial development for a fee and anywhere from 15 to 20% for large-scale industrial. We're talking about 100,000 square foot building. Now I gotta pay $18 per square foot on top of that. We're gonna lose jobs. I think it's something we should consider, and probably consider segregating the development fee a little bit more, maybe some nuance, addressing what costs per square foot really are for different types of construction. And industrial operators don't care about selling you coffee. They care about creating products and access to the 401, power, water and sewer. I get it, but you've got Carrying Place Industrial Park coming up, and how much land do we have in the North Murray Industrial Park? It's not built yet. Till that building permit gets issued, these guys will pull out. Consider what you're doing.
Next.
Council, my name is Jamie Troke. I'm with eCourt Realty, basically a lifelong resident of Trenton, commercial realtor in the area, and certainly worked with lots of the council here. But as Tom has done a lot of industrial and commercial real estate deals, so I'm here to talk about that sector and the 20% of the budget, or basically that you're asking the industrial sector to pick up. What historically, from my perspective, and virtually I feel the industrial and commercial sector are the job creators. Without industrial, without commercial, we don't have jobs, and therefore we don't need roads, and theoretically I think we understand that concept. So if the projections, as I can see, and I did take a chance to read some of the Watson report, though I only left for about 3 weeks, and I felt like I'm behind about 2 years in the process here in the last month or so. So I don't know where the speed is coming from for this. I've looked in through the reviews. I just clearly don't understand the need for speed when we're talking over technically a 10-year budget term and over a 20-year official plan change. So if this was affecting individual taxpayers, this debate, this room would be packed and they'd be lined up outside. At this point, we've only got a few people here that are defending what, in my opinion, are the job makers of our community and the growth of our community. So from that perspective, I feel if there was an ask, and I by no means know if it's possible, that the bylaw enforced date be deferred at least, or possibly staged in over the next 3 to 4 years, where industries and commercial business makers or decision makers, they need a lot more than 2 or 3 months to make decisions. I'm working the same as Tom, large industrial players that are going to say, if you're going to be charging me $18 a square foot for development fees, in which are turning into $2 and $3 million, and that's not even the building permit side of this, and we just have so much more costs on top of this that they will, and have already, as Tom has mentioned, will turn away. You're proposing to double the development charges from Belleville. I assume you're aware of that. Belleville's $9 a square foot, you're looking at 18. So your competitive edge is leaving real fast, real fast. You were always known as the place to come to do business with, and I don't think you want to be tarred with that other brush. So from my perspective, the ask is to, at a minimum, to change the date to December 1st, 2025. And if it's possible to phase in beyond that. So I'm not in disagreement with the need for the infrastructure, the need for the cost. It's just the timelines that we sit with. Business people and large industrial decision makers have not had enough time to deal with this. Thank you. And just for those who don't know, eCourt is Troke backwards.
That makes sense.
eCourt is Troke backwards, yeah.
Everybody knows.
Good evening.
Angelo?
Mr. Mayor.
Go ahead.
Members of the council. My name is Angelo Puglisi. I'm a resident and local land developer within the Quinte West area. I'm here actually support the comments presented by John Van Heusen, and as you know, we sit on the home builders together, and we've been discussing this matter amongst all the builders and developers and trades and so on that make up our home builders, and you know, we've got to express our concerns the way this has moved forward. You know, we feel as stakeholders that we were trying to get involved from day one. We have presented our comments, and we feel that we haven't been taken seriously. And this was presented last week or the week previously by John Van Heusen through his deputation. We are concerned with the increase. We do know that an increase is required to support growth. We're not against an increase, but we think it should be increased in a more responsible manner. You know, approving this bylaw this evening, we all know we're going to be setting Quinte West will be setting precedents. And it will affect the affordability of housing throughout the Bay of Quinte area. You're going to see all these other municipalities that have their development charges bylaw under review right now, and setting this at $37,000 is just going to give them the same, you know, insight that, hey, this is where it should be. And we feel that it's more a number that's been put out there versus being able to really see what it should be, that amount. John threw out $30,000, and we agree with that. We think that's a more reasonable increase. I read an article last week that in the Hamilton and in Toronto areas, that 31% of a new house is made up of fees, DCs, and taxes. And in no time, you'll see Quinte West in that position where 31% of the houses here will be a result of taxes and fees. We respectfully request, you know, that council not approve this tonight, and give us some time to sit down and come up with a more reasonable development charge that would be, you know, that would help the affordability and so on. Are we approving this because of one project? We still have another year on the DC bylaw. Is it one project that we need to push through? So now we're pushing this bylaw through just to get the financing for one project?
No.
I think that may be the case.
No.
If,
There are several projects, yes, but go ahead.
yeah, but we know there's a specific project, but a couple months delay on the approval, I don't think will hurt the overall schedule of that project.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Next.
How you doing? Travis Royal. I'm a small developer. Unlike the big hitters over here, I'm just a little guy. This
Well,
change,
you could have fooled me.
well, not by stature.
Obviously, okay.
So this change, I have a small project about to start in Trenton, 9-unit build, right? It's a 6-plex and a triplex. My development charges are going to go from $99,000 to $254,000. That is going to make my project undoable. So for the small guy, this is going to make it so that I can't continue to build more housing, et cetera, et cetera. So I'd love for you guys to just really consider, you know, like the change that you're about to make is handcuffing the large guys to go out of Trenton, and it's going to make someone like myself do the same. So please consider it as a no. Or a delay, or like a tiered-in system or something. But that's it.
Is your hat a crossbone or is that a hockey stick?
It's 2 golf clubs.
Oh, golf clubs.
Yeah,
Oh,
it's Mizuno
okay.
Golf.
Okay, I feel better already.
Yeah.
I was kind of worried. All right, thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. Next.
Hello, Council. Matthew Leonard, Olympus Properties Group, and property manager, young entrepreneur, and like to get to development. Not there yet. First projects in Marysville, but I do want to state that I reverberate a lot of what these guys' comments are. As a property manager, I see a lot of these developers and stuff wanting to add more housing into the area, and I really do think that there's a missed opportunity when you're increasing development charges. You're putting a cap, or you're forcing people to move out of the area, or forcing the finances to not be a good play in this area. and they'll just move to somewhere else where they're gonna get the ROI that they want. And I can tell you right now, my business has grown significantly from young developers and other people who want to build housing, do duplexes, do triplexes, to come to this area because the numbers work. And right now, with development charges going to like a huge 2.5x, I think, was what I was seeing on the numbers, at least talking with some other people, like that's gonna push people out of these development plays. And now you're gonna lose on potential tax revenue, I think is another good point to consider, that you could have more and more people coming in here, adding housing, adding tax revenue, versus getting it up front on maybe some development charges that you get once up front, and then after that, you don't get an ongoing increase in your revenue stream. So it's just something to consider from my perspective, but just want to reiterate that for you guys.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you. Anyone else? Come on up, Jamie. Is your name O'Shea or?
Jamie O'Shea from Doran Homes. You're all familiar with me. I want you to consider the implications of the development charge on the taxpayers. We're a builder and we pass this cost on to our customers. Sure, we may have a few less customers, but the big picture is the amount that's going to have to go on to the taxpayers. And nowhere in this whole process has council or staff talked about what this means to the taxpayer. How much are the taxes going to have to go up on an annual basis to fund these projects? Because remember, development charges only cover a small portion of it. The rest has to either come from user fees or taxes. So what are the taxes going to be? And we're going to hear later what the costs of the user fees are going to be. That needs to be considered.
Well, yeah, sure. Anyway, so it's, yeah.
And the development
It's
charges-
a big part of everything we do.
Yeah. But
So, I
if we-
mean, well, you're
but-
accusing us of putting our head in the sand, or what are you trying to tell me?
No, I'm just saying,
Thank you.
nobody has brought forth what the impact.
Well,
of taxpayers is.
Jamie, okay, go ahead.
Has anybody? Sorry, did I miss that? Do we know what the impact of the tax?
Well,
is?
you and I both know that there will be an impact. Can I give you the exact figure? No, it depends on what you build.
Right, but that's what I'm saying. If we build less, you still have the plan to do all these projects. And if we build less houses, the taxpayers have to pick up more of the cost. So I just want you to realize that by putting the development charge up to where you're proposing could impact the volume of houses that can get constructed, which then impacts the length of time that the projects can take to fulfillment, or you have to find other sources of funding. So we just
Okay.
need to be cognizant of that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, who else? Anyone else? Come on up. Betty Jean?
Betty Jean Cruz, 89 Appledine Drive. Mayor, members of council, you've heard from the experts in the field. I would like to add my voice for some thought on this proposed development charge increase, particularly for new commercial and industrial. I'm not an expert. They're the experts, so I don't have those numbers.
X is an unknown quantity and a spurt's a drip under pressure. So none of us are experts, okay? Let's stick with, yeah, you're,
But in details, they have the expertise, let's say that. I have some expertise in agriculture, in agriculture politics. I have very little expertise in development, and I urge you to listen to those who do. I do have also some expertise in budgets, because I've been chair of a number of organizations with multi-million-dollar budgets, not anywhere near yours, but I understand this city, you've got your backs against the wall. The budget is crucial. But if you are relying on this bylaw to enable a big chunk of that budget deficit or that budget challenge, then you have to look at the realistic side of you can't count that money until it comes in. In reality, these people, there's a lot of credibility to what they're saying, that if the costs are too high, there are options. And commercial and industrial development in particular is going to go elsewhere. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. Thank you. Anyone else? Questions, comments from council? Anybody? Any comments? Councilor Elliott, go ahead.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, thank you. I know at the last meeting when it was passed to accept the recommendations from staff and the consultant, I asked for a deferral, and I know I had a seconder, and then it lost, and I respect that. I did not vote in favor of the increase. I still do not accept it. I think it is excessively high. I understand where our staff is coming from and where the consultant come from, but we've always had to prioritize what we needed. I agree with the comments down here. We're not going to be competitive. Our neighbors are going to be, from the numbers that I see here, are going to be much lower, and if anybody does business, the bottom line is what you look at. And that's where the favoritism will be directed, I'm quite sure. So even if we approve this and we think we're going to be taking in extra money, the way I see it, we will be stagnated, and even at the numbers that our staff has presented with us, we won't be making any money because there'll be no business done here. So it's a double-edged sword. I still think we can look at it. I think we do need an increase, but I think we got to be responsible and respectful of looking at both sides of the situation. And I thought the last time when I introduced the deferral that maybe one more kick at the can, I'll put it that way, of our representation of the builder's side and our staff, we could come up with a respectable number that maybe we can all live with, and it could be responsible for down the road when we have to look at other things. And it'll certainly, the 10-year projections, I know what our staff has presented us, it's not a rosy picture, that's for sure. And as we know, everything costs more every day. It's just astronomical what things are. But we have to, I think, look at things in a common sense, respectable way, and I still think it's too much, and I won't be supporting the bylaw as presented, but I would ask my colleagues to maybe reconsider and look at maybe another alternative, whether it's deferral or however you want to deal with this. Thank you.
Councillor McHugh and then Councillor...
Thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, as I recall, I believe I seconded that motion the last time for a deferral, and then I brought up about maybe sawing it off the $30,000 mark. And then I listened to staff, and based on what I heard from staff, and I'm going to ask them to repeat it again, why we can't delay this any further. Or maybe now they can tell us we can delay it 3 months or 6 months, I don't know. But based on what I heard from staff, we put them out, they do the work, they're creditable people. They're here for the long term, we're here for 4 years. Luckily, if we can get through 4, hopefully maybe 4 more, we don't know. But they're the people that crunch the numbers. It's a tough job. They advise us. We listen to them, we ask questions. So once again, I'm going to ask, like I said, I was for a deferral, for maybe sawing it off of the $30,000. But sorry from staff, maybe the finance department explain to everybody, again, the public and everybody here, what delaying this 3 months, 6 months, or a year will do with regards to where the city of Quinte West is going forward as far as taxes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Councillor McHugh, I'll maybe add some comments, and then I don't know if Mr. Hodge wants to add anything when I'm done, but really the option to defer this really does put at jeopardy some of the projects that we need to do in this city to move development forward. And while technically, yes, that is an option that council can look at, postponing the implementation, they can even look at deferral, but those are all things that have, I'm going to say, potential consequences on us being able to do some of those projects and get them done in a timely manner. And deferring or pushing some of those off could also affect when some of the developers here want to do their developments. We need to make sure we have water and sewer in particular and some of our roads in place to accommodate those developments as they move forward. So yes, there are some options available to council potentially, but again, we need to, staff has done a lot of work on this. We've worked with the consultants, and we have come up with a number that reflects the amount of growth that we know that the city is going to have. And so any of those options to defer and push off, we may also have to look at, where the growth is taking place in the city, and we may have to look at limiting growth moving forward if we go down that road. So I think it's important for council to understand that those are some of the things that we would have to look at and consider if council does not approve the charge that we have in front of you tonight.
Mr. Quinte.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. So this is an extremely difficult decision because I'm not a developer, I'm not an accountant, I'm not a forecaster of anything except what I'm going to say in the next minute or two. I also supported the deferral because I wanted to keep talking to see if there was a way to resolve it. I do not want to be in a position where we are charging too much, but at the same time, if we don't make some changes, then somebody's going to have to be paying, and it's going to be myself and my neighbors and my fellow councilors, because we're all property owners of this in this city as well. So new development, like these development charges weren't invented yesterday. Development charges have been around for quite some time, and it's not a new thing. So I still don't like the amount of the increase. I don't like it at all. But on the same side, the cost of everything, as everybody's well aware, has ballooned to a crazy number that is almost unimaginable. And I'm not going to be supporting the motion as it's written as well. Thanks.
Anyone else? Anyone else? Okay, I'm going to ask CEO Clazy just to clarify. We have a list of projects, and we are we've designed the development charges so that we can complete projects. Now, if we ask you to go back and look at reducing the charge to 30,000, what projects, and I guess I'm trying to get you to look in a crystal ball maybe or something, what projects are we not going to be able to do if we do go back to that, and what's the impact on development in our city? If you can give me any information there, would be much appreciated. Either any of you.
All right, Mr. Mayor, through you to the rest of council, I'll do my best to try and answer this the best that I can. I think what we need to do is kind of step back and kind of look at the reason for the development charges. When we look at the amount of growth that we know and expect that's coming forward for the city as we grow over the next 10, 20, 30, 40 years, and then we take that information and we look at the projects we need to do to ensure that we can handle that growth. So we have a number of new residents and new homes being built, new commercial, new industrial, and all the projects costs that we have to ensure that we can handle that growth. And we basically divide them together to come up with a development charge. So if council was to say, go back and cut some projects out, we could potentially look at it. We'd have to decide which projects to push out, take off, but then that means we've limited the development. So now we have less development to divide that into, and we're probably going to end up with a number that's basically the same as we are. The only way to really effectively do anything with the charge, and even in saying that, I'm not even sure we can make a big difference, council would really need to be directing staff to say, okay, we're going to stop doing development in certain areas of the city so that we can remove those projects for that development area and focus on other development areas. And really, that's what we're coming down to for council to direct staff if that's what we want to look at, trying to get the development charge down. And I'll just add to that. So on top of that, council does have the ability to defer the implementation of this charge. But in doing so, we are now not having the higher charge coming into play till later in the future. And as I mentioned earlier, we have a number of projects that we need to get moving on and get undertaken. And those projects we're debt financing mainly because that's all the funds we have is to cover the debt financing of those projects, not paying for them outright. So that's a concern for us to push that off. Council also has the ability to phase in the charge.
So instead of doing 37, council could say, well, maybe we'll do 25 to start with, and then a year from now, 30, whatever that could look like. Again, the issue with that is the difference between whatever council implements and that 37,000, whether on every new home being built, that difference is now being picked up by the rest of the taxpayers in Quinte West. So that's really the options council have, and some of the consequences, if you look at it, or fallout of what those decisions would be. So what's in front of council tonight is basically the bylaw to implement the charges that were put in front of council at the previous meeting that were approved by council at that time. And really tonight, the decision for council is to implement that bylaw as written, or give direction to staff to look at one of those other options.
Thank you. Any other? Councillor Katsoulis.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. At the last meeting too, I was in favor of the phased-in approach. I know we have to raise the amount significantly, and it has to be done quickly. It can't be over a matter of years. The benefit of the phased-in approach is it may motivate builders to develop a little bit faster. The taxpayer may not like it originally, but as some of these individuals mentioned, they are creating jobs in these industry and commercial venues. So the taxpayer almost needs it to have a job so that they have these taxes. I'm still not convinced about it entirely of a number, but I am in favor of the phased-in approach. And then we can get to that somehow with more discussion.
This way. Councillor Settle.
Thank you. I'm going to have to agree with CIO Clazy on this. I don't think any kind of deferral is warranted unless we change our projects and unless we change what our future development is going to be. We sat here a couple of weeks ago and we were presented with the same list of projects, and this council was asked, did you want to increase your water rates for the same list of projects? And you said yes. So you put the water rates up, we approved those to go forward on the same list, and yet there was nobody sitting in council chambers that was talking about those water rates. And today we've got people sitting in the council chambers talking about development charges, and I see council changing their mind. We either are supporting these projects or we're not supporting these projects. And if we are, then we have to implement the development charges now, because otherwise it's going to end up on the taxpayers. And you know how I feel about tax rates going up.
Councillor Boyce.
Thank you, Your Worship. And I've listened. I've actually listened. When I was a councillor in Belleville since 2003, I listened to over and over again the talk about the deferrals. And initially, there were years that we did deferrals, but I mean, I've been listening for the last several weeks here about what is the magic figure, and I've heard 30,000 thrown around by several people numerous times, and I've yet to hear the sound basis for 30,000. Whether it's just a figure that the developers picked and said, you know what, we don't want 37, let's do 30. But we paid Watson, I believe it was Watson, a fair amount of money to do a report, and we relied on their expertise on their report. And this is the money that's been come up, 37,000, and I just can't defer it without any sound basis. Why 37 doesn't make sense, but yet 30's more of a reasonable figure. So. I agree with Councillor Stedall that we need to go forward and not delay.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, any other public input? Anyone else? Anyone else for public input on anything else that you want that's on the agenda? That's what should be in your comments.
So from what I've listened to, it's really a hard decision for the council. But the reality is, and I think it was my point earlier, if this was a meeting where residential taxpayers were being affected on an individual basis, the place would be full. But this is why we turn to the councils to make these really hard decisions. The reality is the taxes have to go up. Is it going to be a burden to the point that you don't want to make that decision, that raise the residential tax rates, and the fact that, as my other Jamie mentioned, that if we do not grow by, I think it's 3,300 homes, if we do not grow by the pace that Watson, which I understand there was a peer review of the Watson report? No? So we only have one report to determine the entire growth of this city for the next 20 years. Is that correct?
Well, Director Clazy, there's more involved.
If I can, Mr. Mayor, the growth projections didn't just come out of the Watson report. That came from other reports and other information that we had here that was used for that. So it wasn't just.
The Watson report is part of the foundation. Either way, the point is that the taxpayers of the community, which I am of and do pay taxes, may be faced with that hard decisions of the council, and that's really what we're avoiding here at your end. I think is that reality of facing that and dealing with the taxpayers. And that's where it's going to come from. If these implementations take place, if you double rates and you take on these rates, I agree, where did the 30,000 come from? Maybe out of nowhere, but we're all facilitators, we're all negotiators, and that's really what we're trying to do here, is work with the council over the period of time. But you do have to make that hard decisions, which everyone is really avoiding, as I can tell, back on the taxpayers to take on some of the burden. It's not only the developer and the builders of this community, it's all our problem in this community. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. No one disagrees. Okay, I got one more public input, and then I'll come to Councilor Card. Thank you.
If I may add, Councillor Boyce, the number 30,000 came up, but we have been going back and forth with staff. We have expressed our concerns with some of the numbers reported by Watson's. One being growth. We didn't agree with the growth. We didn't agree with the post-period benefits. A lot of these issues were brought up, but were, in our opinion, not taken seriously or dismissed, or at least not being able to sit down. So maybe that number will go down from 37 to 30. But these are things that we need to look at. Council needs to look at. They're showing, Watson's is showing a negative growth. And how are you going to present yourself to the province looking for funding showing a negative growth? So we're saying Quinte West's growth over the next 10 to 20 years is on a decline. And if you're looking for provincial funding, how does that happen when you show negative growth? We've seen positive growth in this area. We've hit a few years, it's been bad, we understand, we're all feeling it. But to say that we're gonna go from 200, 250 units a year down to 160 units a year, is that what you want to present to the province? When Prince Edward County just got $18.3 million? They want to see positive growth. We want to see funding. We want Quinte West to get the next round of funding.
Just beyond what you're saying, we've said the same thing to the province. They want us to build, but they've come forth with zero.
Well, but your reports are showing negative growth over the
No,
next
they're
2
not.
years.
But anyways,
The numbers are showing
but,
negative.
and it's the same with.
And this is our concern with the report,
Yeah.
with all due respect.
I know what you're saying, and I understand that, but I'm still mystified by the result.
So this is where that number, if we look at positive growth, where we think this is going to go, then, yeah, that number might come down to 32, might come down to 30. But that's something that needs to be further reviewed by your consultant.
So your 30's not, like, I mean, what's the facts and figures that you're saying 30? But now you're telling me that it might come down, like 30. Where's it come from?
Well, as somebody mentioned, there's also a point of negotiation, what we think.
But there is, but
that
negotiation.
What we think we can absorb. We realize that there are a lot of projects. We know what projects are going. We've reviewed the projects with staff. We've looked at some of them. We've made comments on some of them. But it is an increase of 150%. It's a lot. It's the highest in the area. So that's just our concern. Let's look at these numbers. We've asked on multiple occasions. There was a motion to defer it a month. Maybe this is something that we could have been addressing over the last month. And then maybe next month, we could have been agreeable to a number. But we asked for that. We asked for, there was a motion, it wasn't passed. So there are still comments, and I think that these comments need to be seriously reviewed and seriously addressed. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm going to go to Councillor Card now, please.
Thank you, Your Worship, and I appreciate this is a very difficult issue on all sides. We may never come to a full consensus on council during the debate, but I can say for sure that everyone, I believe, is thinking about the developers and also the property taxpayers. One of the scenarios that I think of, and yes, if there is less building and less revenues from the DCs, and it is possible that property taxpayers would have to pay more if we were wildly off on the projections. I worry about another scenario if we passed a $30,000 DC for the residential houses and all of the growth did happen at the same schedule and all of those projects had to be done. There would be tens of millions of dollars that would have to be paid for by property taxpayers to make those projects happen based on the $30,000 if we needed all of those growth projects. So that would be tens of millions of dollars that would have to be filled that hole. That's if the growth projections happen to be at a lower DC rate. But I appreciate that this is a very difficult issue, and for everyone on council, Brighton at 35,000. I think that Belleville's at 30. Believe they're opening up their process soon. Who knows what that number will be next year? Inflation, you'll see later in the meeting, the infrastructure deficit that we are dealing with here, the infrastructure of Quinte West, our long-term projections are not great. And there's $13 million a year that we're not spending on roads that we need to maintain the current quality, just to maintain. And we've got a lot of issues with our asset management. I appreciate this is a difficult issue for everyone, but just wanted to add that.
Thank you. I'm going to move on. Caleb, Director Denowden, you've got a budget presentation for us. I'm going to have you do that now. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. So tonight is the first of three of our special budget meetings. This is basically a prelude to our actual two-day budget meeting, December 4th and 5th, where we give a bit of a budget outlook and long-term capital plan, and basically provide information that will better equip council to make decisions and request any specific information of staff that we can provide before those meetings in December. One of the main factors in making informed decisions on the budget is knowing the long-term impact, and that's why we have a long-term financial plan. Over the next 10 years, council will have several things to consider. Obviously, our growth study has been discussed tonight. Do we invest in projects that are required for new housing development, industrial lands? How much funding is available for these projects and various sources of revenue? Do we rehab our existing $2 billion of infrastructure at an equal rate to its deterioration? What level of service do we expect our roads to be in 4 years? Better, worse, or the same? Do we put money into climate change initiatives, social services, healthcare, housing affordability? Do we push the province or other levels of government to support us financially with grant applications and lobbying? And to what extent do we increase our support to community partners like hospitals, museums, and recreation centers? So we'll start looking at the budget outlook, then talk a bit more about the assets, which is the biggest number. So the asset management plan talks a bit about all our $2 billion in assets, and then we'll break it into city and water and sewer long-term capital plans. This is a bit of breakdown of our budget outlook, and so I'll just keep kind of rolling through here. Our budget timeline, as you know, we had a meeting earlier in July where we talked about the budget timeline. Since then, we also had a public engagement. Right now, we're at October 30th, where we have the budget outlook, and we've had a couple external agencies present, And then December 4th and 5th will be the full budget book presented, along with some of these external requests as well. And we hope to finalize all of the budget by January 15th. Starting with some economic trends and inflation, very similar to last year, you can see in this chart we accumulated CPI over the last 4 years compared to the cumulative tax levy increase without the capital levy to show the gap that still exists between the cumulative tax increases and CPI. And this is more related to the operating budget. So the last 4 years, inflation has increased 16.5%, and tax increases without the capital levy have been up 10%. And we further extrapolate this to show, first in 2021, when Bank of Canada's inflation exceeded its 2% target, 2022 it hit a 4-decade high, and in 2023 we had 3.7%. And this September, it's dropped down below 2% at 1.6. So things are coming down, but even with inflation coming under control, there's still those historic increases that were not matched with tax levies that we're still dealing with. When we come to inflation on non-residential indices, we have non-res CPI, NRB CPI, which is more indicative of our cost to build roads. This is obviously a larger issue for our infrastructure deficit. The cumulative impact of substantial increases to the non-res index has resulted in a 49% increase in capital costs when compared to 2019 prices. The capital levy has increased approximately 26% with the capital levy dedicated increases. So there's still that 13% gap just on inflation alone from these indices. And that doesn't really consider those anecdotal stories that we have of some of our projects and how much they cost. A similar chart that just shows the year over year as opposed to the accumulated, where you can see the inflation is coming down, which is good news. We take a look every year at some of our main budget drivers. Energy prices we looked at, so heat, hydro, fuel. We do use LAS Energy Services to help hedge both our natural gas and electricity costs to keep them somewhat stagnant. Overall, the city budget's approximately $1 million for electricity, $500,000 for heat, and over 1.25 for fuel. These charts actually show the stability of energy prices for us. However, we do have some issues with global adjustment fees and high usage, and especially when it comes to water and sewer, that we are trying to deal with for this budget. Gasoline prices, similar. Fuel prices remain pretty steady the last couple of years, but this all does come with an increase that came from the 2019-2022, where prices were much lower. Salaries and benefits, maybe I'll pass it to CEO Clazy just to give you a brief update on where we're at with that and how that might affect our budget this year.
Sure, thanks, Caleb. So just to talk about salaries and benefits, of course, this is one of our larger items in our budget. So there's four main things I just want to talk about briefly. First of all, being contractual obligations. So as council's aware, we have a number of employment contracts and union agreements with our staff and non-union staff. And so we're expecting that those increases will be approximately $875,000 in 2020 for the 2025 budget. In addition, we have some positions that were hired in 2024 and they were budgeted for a partial year, and those will have an impact on our budget again in 25. One of the things that we are looking at doing for our 25 budget as we bring new staff positions forward, we'll be including the full year's budget for those positions, so then we won't be into this situation as we move forward. In addition, we're undertaking a job evaluation, job equity review, and we will include an allowance for that. And then just talking about growth, and there's been a lot of discussion about growth tonight in the city growing, and you know, we need to keep that in mind. As the city grows, we need to also continue to grow our staff as well. Because as the city grows, there's more demand on the city for service, whether it's more roads to plow, more parks to look after, more inquiries to City Hall. So those are all things that we need to keep in mind and as we move forward. So based on the amount of growth that we have, we should be looking at adding at least 4 new staff positions every year just to basically maintain the same level of service that we've been providing in the past. So we'll be looking at that as part of our budget package as we move forward as well. So Caleb, I'll turn it back.
Thank you. So the next piece that we'll talk about is the external partners, external agencies. We have from a couple tonight. So Quinte West transfers approximately 30 million, or over a third of our general tax levy, to external partners. I've started here as some of the agencies with significant increases or a significant impact on our levy increase. I'll start kind of at the top. So preliminary budgets have mixed results. We have Library Quinte Conservation coming in at inflation, where in at around inflation. Obviously, we had Lower Trent tonight, where we're closer to 11.5% for that increase. Staff plan on updating council on some of the Quinte Waste budget and the new producer responsibility. Although, as you know, the last 2 years we've had front-ending savings in the previous 2 budgets, trying to predict savings here. One of the larger external partners, the OPP, has provided a $10.7 million budget for 2024. That is a 19% increase from the 2024 budget. We have a separate staff report just on the OPP budget. We did reach out to have representation here to discuss this. Unfortunately, this has become a province-wide issue for all OPP municipalities, and we will have to wait for more information on this. Overall, this alone contributes 2.2% increase to the levy just with the OPP budget. We're still waiting on budgets from Quinte Transit and Public Health. And as you know, the largest external partner, Hastings County, which several councillors sit on, will be in deliberations on their budget in the new year. That is a $12 million budget that accounts for over 15% of the levy. Of the other boards and agencies, we have Sterling Arena that is yet to provide their budget for 25, but we know there's some issues and increases there. We also have included a significant increase for the Humane Society to align with the agreement council approved earlier this year. That will see about $200,000 or 100% increase to that organization's budget. New this year, there will be fewer organizations at the 2-day meeting in December, as we've already requested some of their draft budgets and have seen them tonight. But we'll review them all again on December 4th and 5th. External community groups, again, we heard from a couple tonight. Community organizations provide various services to the public and can often have significant benefits to achieve the strategic priorities of council. However, additional commitments to these groups require increased revenue. The list above are some of the groups we have expected to hear from or have heard from, and so these will have to be considered as we have those motions to defer them to the budget discussion as well. The city receives annually 3 different sources of funding from the provincial government. OSIF, the Community Infrastructure Fund, is $6.6 million. We did receive a 15% increase over last year. However, the year before that, we saw a decrease, so we're still below a number that we saw a couple years ago, but it is nice to see that number come back up. The Community Building Fund, which was the old gas tax fund from the federal government, is at $2.8 million and unchanged. The OMPF, the Ontario Municipal Partnership Fund, is usually around 1.3 million. We just got news this afternoon that it will be 1.4 million, so there's about an 8% increase on that fund. The fund pills, we're still dealing with that issue, so we did receive a one-time top-up for the 3 years between 2021 and 2023 from the provincial government. This issue is still ongoing. We did not receive money in 2024. We cannot budget in 25. We can't assume we'll receive it, but we do know it's on ongoing battle or legal issues with some of our colleagues in other municipalities that are dealing with the federal and provincial government on this issue, and we're waiting to hear. Funding applications, we have several funding applications. As you can see, the first 2 there were denied not too long ago, and we have 3 at least in the queue right now. So if we hear from any of these, we'll obviously include it in the budget, but at this point we don't have any funding we can announce. The priority scoring tool, this is the tool that Mr. Fox came to speak about here. So this is the tool we used last year for the first year in our budget book. So staff is asked when they do present a project to use a score to prioritize it. It helps us prioritize projects across the spectrum from parks to roads. There's several categories here. I just want to remind council, because this is the tool we're using, you'll see an end score when we do present the capital list in December, and provide, so there's 5 categories. The project category, if it's legally mandated, minimum requirement, we're seeing some of that when it comes to stormwater management. Obviously the score will be higher. When it comes to strategic alignment, we look at the strategic plan that council approved and if it aligns with any of those priorities. We have operating impact, so this does score whether there's going to be an ongoing maintenance cost to these projects, or if it'll save money. If it's an LED light project, for example, it might save in operating. We have health and safety, service level impact, so this gets to, let's say, roads. If it improves the service level of our roads or our PCI indices, it'll score higher there. And then the funding impact was the item where if we do have matching funding, for example, the Bain Park Trail, which would expire in the next, I believe, 2 years, if it's not spent, it's lost. So those do score generally higher. This is an example of how that priority score would work on a sample project, and you'll see a total score. And I do want to remind you that these are subjective, it's obviously the ability to reprioritize when we do present our list of projects. So earlier this year, as I mentioned, we did a budget engagement survey for 2 months between July 16th and September 16th. We had about 224 responses. We have, in this chart, we had about 60, sorry, I did reverse the numbers, Councillor Armstrong noted for me, so that 50% responded that our quality of service provided by the city was good. So about 50-50, and we found this with several questions. Top priorities, we did see that people put capital infrastructure, public works, and fire as the top priorities for spending. When asked about tax rates and services, we had about 50-50 when it came to maintaining services with inflation-adjusted tax increases or increasing taxes and enhancing service levels. In terms of user fees, 50% of respondents supported increasing user fees to reduce property tax burden for recreation services, so again 50-50. And there was some support, about 55%, for eliminating garbage bag tags, even if it resulted in a tax increase, although respondents were less supportive of eliminating dog tag fees under the same condition. So these results are interesting and help us have a bit of an insight into what some of the public's thinking. The strategic plan. So these are the 5 priorities we were talking about earlier that council had set under its strategic plan: healthy, vibrant community, economic prosperity, environmental stewardship, infrastructure, and operational excellence. Few of the below levies are examples of what council's done recently. Housing, there's a $150,000 levy in the last couple of years. Again, that would come forward this year. Industrial land, an annual levy into that reserve. Climate change, there was a levy a couple of years ago of $150,000. That was removed last year. So there's nothing going into the climate change levy, or reserve, I should say. The capital levy is obviously focused on infrastructure, and we'll have to make a decision on what the appropriate level is there. And healthcare, there's an increase going to be in the operating budget as a result of some of the changes to doctor recruitment. So the asset management plan status. In this last year, we've done some work on our stormwater pond evaluation. We just completed. A report will be going to council in November. These costs are to be put into the next asset management plan and help us understand what we need to do to maintain these stormwater ponds. We do yearly road assessments, the bottom left quadrant. That's actually a picture of our vehicle that goes out every year and evaluates PCI road condition. This allows us to see degradation curves on specific roads, and it also helps us prioritize which roads are in the worst condition or which should be dealt with first. We've done our first phase of the facility assessments on the bottom right, so we've done most of the larger value buildings, and we've updated our asset management plan with the values of buildings and what the assessments have said about what needs to be replaced on those buildings. And we have all light fleet has GPS tracking, so we know we can have a better handle of vehicle utilization. And we will be building utilization reports and building that into the next version of the asset management plan as well to ensure we're right-sizing the right amount of equipment for our staff. At the end of the day, what you can see is we're working towards a data-driven 10-year capital plan. It's not simply what we want, but what the data says we need for the next 10 years. In terms of timeline, this is important. So we've come a long way since July 1st, 2022, where we first evaluated our core assets, made sure we knew the replacement value and the value that we'd have to spend annually on that. July 1st, 2024, just recently, we added all of our outdoor parks and rec facilities, fleet, so we have all of our assets now under the asset management plan, and you can find those all on our website. The next big target is July 1st, 2025, where we have to move from identifying our assets and actually setting a proposed level of service and how we're going to fund those levels of service. The example there, water and wastewater rate study, that should be fresh on your minds. We just talked about the kind of number of water main breaks per year, age of pipe, those types of things. We need to decide what is the target in 10 years, and we have to be clear with the province how we plan to get there. If we're going to fund it, and if we're not going to fund it, then we have to set our service level lower. So that will be the next 6 months after budget, is evaluating the asset management plan and setting proposed levels of service. The infrastructure deficit over time. So in 2023, the numbers on the far left there include just core infrastructure. As I mentioned, we've come a couple of years since our asset management plan has been implemented. Non-core infrastructure additions were then added to 2024. Then you'll see in 2025, the ideal spend there jumps again, and that's driven by some of the stormwater information we've just received on how much we need to spend annually on our storm ponds and stormwater. And there's final, non-core costs and inflation. The new development charge revenue and assumed, in this model here, it's assumed a 2% capital levy. They would slowly drive up funding, but still leave us with an annual infrastructure deficit, and even an infrastructure deficit in 10 years. This basically needs to be funded by debt or other sources of revenue. This does not include items from Parks and Rec Master Plan, potential industrial land investments, or new services. And so we've shown you what 4% capital levy looks like, where we actually are able to, within 6 or 7 years, close that gap and put the infrastructure deficit behind us. So the more aggressive we are at increasing the capital levy, the quicker we can deal with an infrastructure deficit and the effect on the levels of service. So we'll jump into the long-term capital plan. Again, kind of on the same topic, the capital levy. As you may remember, the last council had a few years of 1% dedicated capital levies. We had a 2% capital levy in 2023, and last year was reduced to 1.5%. So this is one of the main topics that we'll have to discuss December 4th and 5th, and that we'll need council's feedback and to seriously consider what is that level for the capital levy. More detail on that infrastructure deficit. You can see on the right-hand side, the last 4 years, we've averaged 22 million. We use the 4-year average because there are blips every year in how much we spend. So we've been spending approximately 22 million a year. In our 10-year forecast, assuming we can slowly increase with 2% a year, we would be able to spend on average 36 million a year over the next 10 years. That's still, as you could see in the bar chart, below the 40 million that we require to keep our assets in the same condition they're in. This is just a snapshot at the roads line and broken down into arterial, local, and surface treated roads, where on roads alone we've been spending 11 and should be spending 20. And again, that infrastructure there, deficit there of 9 million, 2% would get us to an average of 16.8, still short of what we need annually for our roads. We showed a bit of our funding sources and how it's broken down. The blue capital levy is based on the annual 2%, as I mentioned, so some years we'll use more of the capital levy, other years we'll use less. There are, as I was saying, there are kind of blips in the 10-year plan. The orange and yellow OSIF and gas tax have been budgeted to remain flat, as these external funds that come from the province and feds could change up and down. We don't know. We have debt in there on the black, and that's assigned to things like the Wooler Road Bridge, the West End Trunk, the roads component, Centennial Trail, and the one that's in 2034, that's a big one, that's the DJ McDonald Bridge. Other reserves are the gray category. That includes specific amounts set aside, let's say the climate change or industrial land reserve. Those are the gray reserves that are earmarked for those projects. The use of development charges is in green, and this is just the city side, not the water and sewer side. These are collected for the use on growth projects, and grants are the purple. As I mentioned, this is for the Bain to Centennial grant that we know of, but there's not much in the 10-year horizon in terms of grants. Kind of summarizing the four main drivers of the infrastructure deficit, we have rehab projects are deferred, so obviously the postponement of road replacement in past budget compounds to future generations. Inflation, the non-res index, as I mentioned earlier, averaged 12% over the past 3 years, and the capital levy at 2% provides about 1.5 million, well below what we've averaged is 2 million just on inflation. So that's a large part of this problem as well. The third quadrant there, you've got preference for new growth-related projects. We've got industrial land investments that we've been making, carrying place, and potentially future. We have housing levy investments we've been making, park upgrades, new trails and active transportation. Obviously, the capital reserve funds, if they're redirected to growth-related capital projects, that leaves less for the rehabilitation side. And then we have unexpected high-value asset failures. We know that recently we had that water main break in 2023, $1.2 million unexpected asset failure. Marina Breakwall, Wooler Road Bridge, Stella Crescent Storm Pipe, and Frankfurt Canal Bridge Rehab, which will be coming in this year's budget, which is more than we estimated as well. And, yeah, sorry, bad news. So the capital reserves, so again, the reserves aren't looking good either. We have set a target to keep our reserves at the depreciation level. This is a conservative estimate to keep the reserves healthy in case there are unknown costs and to help with cash flow as well. Unfortunately, the trend is that our reserves are going lower. And this is all with the assumption of a 2% capital levy. Development charges, as was discussed tonight, there's annual growth spend of approximately 10 million a year. There are pieces that are not funded by development charges that's benefit to existing portion of these growth projects, and that the city has to pick up. There are also affordable housing exemptions in the DC study that the province mandates we have, so we have to pick up that cost in our budget as well. And we have rental housing and development charge discounts as well. And so this annual contribution of $375,000 will be in the operating budget to cover those exemptions. The city's current tax-funded annual debt payments at the end of 2024 is $5.6 million. So this chart summarizes the debt payments that would be required for the city net of water and wastewater over the next 10 years under the scenario of a 2% tax levy. I'll get in later to the water and wastewater debt and then combined debt. This is just the city debt. The overall ARL, or the annual repayment limit, which is our debt ceiling, is to make, for just the city, would be considered 20.8 million. So you could say there's room on the city side, but again, I'll combine those in a minute. When it comes to the annual capital levy, unfortunately, it's not 100% going to the projects we needed to. Half of it, or 46.9% of it, is going to pay off the debt that we have accumulated over the last 10 years. That leaves about, out of the 13 million capital levy, reduced by 5.9 million in debt payments, leaving about 6.7 annually for new projects. The debt to reserves ratio indicates that the city continues to draw down reserves, and its debt situation is stable. So the debt ratio of 3.8 means for every dollar in reserves, we have $3.8 in debt. The summary of what I basically just spoke to on the city side is that we're below target spend on the capital rehab. We need to address this as soon as we can with some serious capital levy increases. The tax levy increases can be used to address the infrastructure deficit. Reserve balance has little room for contingencies. An additional debt is required, but is limited by ARL, and I'll get into that a bit more shortly. So the water capital plan, we did go through some of this with our recent water rate and wastewater rate study, where we showed how much we need to spend annually. Of the $21.6 million in annual spend in the 10-year forecast that's planned, $10.4 million is required for growth, and $11.1 million is planned for rehab. So this is where we really see the difference between how much is needed in water and sewer that is really driving towards growth projects and prioritizing growth projects. A bylaw with the rates suggestion in option 1 of the 24 wastewater rate study will be on the agenda as a bylaw for this evening. We do have assumptions that we try to limit overall debt payments not funded by DCs. So we have that at 20 million. We try to keep that stagnant and not overutilize debt on the water sewer side. There's no enhancements to current levels of provincial federal funding. Again, no indication that the province or federal government's going to help us out here. 3% inflationary factor was used, and we obviously have assumed the DCs would be approved as have been presented. The outlook for the reserves looks a little bit better on the water wastewater side, although this is where we need the contingency because often these are the unknown problems. So we see with that 8% increase in fees the next couple of years, we'll be using a lot of that on infrastructure and matching infrastructure for growth projects. The reserves will dip for the next few years, and then our projections show that it should stabilize as council did move forward with option 1 there to ensure our tax rates could afford the projects we have on the water wastewater side. Annual growth projects for water and sewer are approximately 10.4 million per year. Obviously this goes up and down depending on the year of the project. Or approximately 264 million over the next 20 years. Although most of this is funded by DCs, the city is required to fund the portion of growth projects attributed to benefit to existing, which we've have approximately at 20%, but it does change per project. And this was factored into the 2024 water and wastewater rate study. And this is the debt that I was talking to you about, where we try to limit the water and wastewater rate debt in that black line to be pretty stagnant. And what we're really taking on debt is for DCs, because DCs will come on slowly. There'll be debt issued, and then the development charges will pay that debt down over the lifetime of that asset. And the combined situation is where we have a bit of concern. So this is the ARL limit at the bottom, the total. So you see the annual payment limit is the light blue line, and then the dark line is where we project to be by 2033. So about 10 years from now, with the debt taken on mainly for growth projects, especially in water wastewater, that's a huge amount that gets us close to the ARL. Now, fortunately, a lot of that debt, as I mentioned, is DC paid, where we're using our own reserves and capital reserves to pay for the city's side of this, but it does mean we will be using a significant amount of debt for development charges, and that does count against our annual repayment limit. The summary of this is additional debt will be needed for future capital projects. The portion of growth projects attributed to benefit to existing and exemptions will need to be funded, so we'll include that in the operating budget. Any exemptions for water and wastewater DCs will also be in the budget. The city's ARL limit will need to be used to supplement the debt payments for water and wastewater projects, as I showed on the previous slide. So to summarize this, we definitely have a tough outlook here on our long-term capital plan, long-term financial plan, it's important we take this overall picture when we go into a one-year budget, not to lose sight of the long-term projections. You know, we're looking specifically at some of these trends. Obviously, asset conditions, we have downward trend, debt, upward trend, external partnership, community groups constantly coming to the table, upward trend, and our reserves, especially with the city side, maybe not so much with the water sewer, but a downward trend there. You know, put this in perspective, Quinte West is in a similar position to its peers. We've had, you know, we've heard from City of Toronto just last year where they were looking for the province to help them out with some of their infrastructure deficit issues. We know that there's some significant tax increases being considered by our neighbors who suffer from the same issues. So that's the summary of my presentation. I'm open to take any questions about that.
Thank you very much. Any council questions at this time, or do you want to?
Yep.
Sorry, go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. We talked about provincial and federal funding, like OSIF, et cetera. You must have a number now for the how much money we're projecting due to new growth. Where are we on that number?
Yeah, so we'll present the official number as part of the budget book.
Okay.
I can say we're between 1 and 1.5% in growth, and that's been consistent with previous years. I think we were at 1.1 last year.
Yeah. So were we approximately the same, maybe a little higher? Okay, and then the second question, and this goes back, and I'm going to exclude the water, wastewater debt, and I understand that part, but when it comes to other projects, and we've had this ongoing discussion earlier tonight about, you know, no one wants to see more money that is put into a reserve that is needed. I'm talking about development charges. And we talk about our debt to reserve funding, and we can all say that our debt to reserve funding our debt's high as compared to a lot of other municipalities that you've compared it to. Is it realistically feasible with the other capital projects to incur additional debt? What I'm getting at is if realistically we don't want to see ourselves even more the ratio, then wouldn't the developers have a point when they say that, are these projects actually going to get done? Or where do we want to see our debt ratio? Like, I mean, I don't want to see our debt ratio so high that the interest rates alone are killing us. So isn't there a valid point when we say that we perhaps some of these projects that are, you know, great to get done, but there's obviously projects that aren't new growth projects that perhaps we should just back off a bit?
Yeah, so I think on the last slide I was showing too, where you have both your growth and rehab, and so it is a priority, right? If growth projects aren't a priority of council, then we can reallocate the matching funds, let's say those 20% funds, back to the rehab. But the asset management plan that the province asks us to have is to include both. So what are your growth projections and your rehab, and try to fund both. So the infrastructure deficit is including both rehab and growth. But yeah, absolutely. I mean, the debt for the city and the water and sewer outside of growth is limited. We are trying to cap that debt. If council wanted to reduce the capital levy but maintain these services, we could absolutely take on more debt, but we tried in these scenarios to limit city debt that wasn't growth related. So most of the debt you were seeing there is for development charges, not general city debt.
Okay, who's next? Councillor O'Neill.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Director Denow. Through you to Director Denow. Could you highlight two of the areas the federal government is actually taking money away from us, the PILT and the carbon tax?
Right, so the PILT I mentioned, we've lost about $1 million a year for the last 2 years. That's based on education rate decision of the province, and it's still in the court. So we've have less PILT revenue than we did a few years ago. When it comes to carbon tax, we were trying to do some calculations for you. Obviously, that hits our fuel, our natural gas purchases, so there's an impact there. I don't want to give you a number yet until we finish the analysis, but
Okay.
we've seen in Belleville that
But
they've released
Belleville
theirs.
says theirs is about 350,000.
Right.
So they're taxing us and not giving us any money back. So they're actually taking money out of our pockets.
Correct.
Thanks.
Nothing new. No. Counselor Siddall.
Just following up what Councillor Neal was saying too, like there's lots of other hits that we're taking. I mean, even today's announcement with the OMPF grant going up and, you know, it sounded great until you get the numbers. That's not very much money. I mean, it doesn't really account for much. The OCIF grant going up, again, it's a small amount. It's not quite enough. We also have our OPP costing, which I know you're going to speak to, and you've got a report on, but like that's a huge hit for us all in 1 year. And I understand that it's wages and it's calls for service. You know, that's the background on it. The other thing is the healthcare. I mean, us paying for physician recruitment and for that type of thing, that is a provincial responsibility. And I think we really need to do, you know, continue to push that there is a discussion as to realignment as to what we're paying for and what the province pays for, because it's just, we're going to see it in our property taxes and people are going to feel it in their pockets, and they're going to get $200 back. Sure. That might help, but I don't think so. Thank you.
Cash it quickly. Anyone else? Anyone else? Counselor. Counselor Coetzee, sorry, go ahead.
That's
Sorry, I
okay.
didn't-
Through you to Director Denowden, can you give us an idea of what debts we will be paying off in 2025? Do we have an example of one or two that will be fully paid for and fully funded, and then we can start collecting for replacing that item again?
I know Mr. Hodge is working quickly to see if he can pull up the spreadsheet. I don't know if any expire in 25, no.
I didn't think so either. I was hoping. Thank you.
Anyone else? Anyone else? Okay, well, thank you very much. And get a little PILT money, payment in lieu of taxes that we received from the federal government was reduced by how many million last year? Was it last year or 2 years ago? Things falling together.
Several years.
2.22, and how much did we lose?
$1 million every.
It was over $1 million.
Yeah, in each of those years, it was just over $1 million.
Just over $1 million in each of those years. And lo and behold, you won't believe this, but the provincial government topped that fund up for us. Yes, can you believe that? Yes, they did. And what have we got, or what are we supposedly maybe going to have for this year from the provincial government to help with the PILT money? Is there anything committed yet, or? No? So we're down, we're down over the $1 million then in PILT, payment in lieu of taxes.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, thank you. Well, we did hit 1 year that was helpful, so, and that was much appreciated, so that's what happens so often. Anything else? Anything else? Okay, all right, well, let's keep going in. I've got the resolution that we just received, the budget outlook. I need to move in a second for that, please. Councillor Allier and Councillor Card. Any comments or questions? Okay, sorry, go ahead, Councillor Sharp.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor, and just a few questions with respect to Mr. Denowden's budget outlook report. I think it's certainly very thorough, and I thought last year was going to be the most difficult budget, but I think this is, going to be very much the same. I wanted to ask, with regard to the operating budget, we know we're going to get to the 12% from the policing and what impact that is. And we know that we are taking on a lot of healthcare items, and we know that will be part of the, I know it's not in here, but we remember that vote. So we know we're going to have to deal with that. My question relates to the staffing, and I think this is more for Mr. Clazy, and we did chat about this earlier today. So we're looking at potentially 4 staff positions and then maybe 6 or additional. So if, Mr. Clazy, if you could just speak to that, and that they're not defined just yet. they're going to come back to us, correct, Mr. Clazy?
That's correct, Mr. Mayor, through you to Councillor Sharp. The point I was trying to make tonight was linking the fact that we need to be adding new staff every year because the city is growing. And when we look at that, you know, on average, we should be looking at adding 4 new staff every year just to keep up with the growth. That doesn't take into some other needs that we may have in the organization where we, you know, feel that we need more staff for service and to keep up with other things. So there will be a staffing component in the budget that's coming forward. We are still finalizing that as we speak. I can't say that it'll be 4 or 6, so that hasn't been determined. The point I was trying to make tonight, and just the general point, was we really do need to be adding new staff every year just to keep up with the growth that's happening in the city.
And Mr. Mayor, if I could I just have 2 more. I know we'll deal with the OPP increase at a subsequent report further on, but I had a question regarding the external community groups are going to come forward, with the exception of the few we've had tonight, in the December meetings, Mr. Denouden?
Yeah, that's right. We may hear from others before. I think we talked about possibly recycling. We'll try to get some of them resolved if they need to beforehand, but otherwise,
Right.
yes, there will be some at the 2-day budget meeting.
Because I do see the YMCA will likely have an ask this year.
Right.
Okay, thank you. And I think I had, if I could, one more with respect to this report. With regard to the capital levy, when I supported the reduction last year to 1.5%. But I think what I'm hearing is we have to really seriously look at that back to 2. I know ideally, I think your report's at 4, but that is something that you were recommending to us, Mr. Denouden.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Anyone else? Okay. All in favor? Carried, thank you. The next one is the resolution that staff report Quinte West 2024-00174 by Director Denouden, the City of Quinte West long-term capital plan be received. Moving a seconder for that one. Councilor Stedall moves, Councilor Neal seconded. Thank you. Comments or questions? All in favor? Thank you. Okay, the next one is resolution that staff report Quinte West 2024-00173, Director Denouden, Quinte West Water and Wastewater Long-Term Capital Plan be received. Councilor McHugh moves, seconded by Councilor Reid. Any comments or questions? Comments or questions? All in favor? Carried, thank you. Resolution of the staff report, Quinte West 2024-00175, Director Denouden regarding budget OPP be received. Need a mover and a seconder. Councilor Armstrong move, Councilor Boyce seconds. Any comments or questions at this time?
Mr. Mayor.
Councilor Quinte.
Did we reach out to the OPP to ask if there was any way we could massage or work with this number to do something else or get at least an option B?
Yes, we have reached out to our new MPP. I have reached out to him to ask him to, because we're only one of several, and to take it to the province and ask them to look at that they could have been wiser and smarter in how they handled the increase and given us more time and so on. So we have done that. And if there's any more, we can certainly follow up with more.
Thank you.
Okay. Councilor Stedall, next. Thank you.
Thank you, Worship. Just on this item, because I've been dealing with it as well, I'm with the work. But it is, it's a multiple-year implementation of the wages. And the reason is that Bill 124 was held back the wages and now we're paying for it. That's part of it. The levels of service is also something. And, I'm not justifying it on behalf of the OPP, but we do know that we've seen a change in the community, and this is across the province. We're not the only municipality. I know that there's some communities up north that one of them is seeing a 65% increase. But the comparison that I see is that the OPP policing that we receive is an efficient model, from what I see. And in comparison to some of our neighbors that have their own police forces and what the numbers are that they have to deal with and the cost that they have on their taxes is significantly higher than what we are paying here in Quinte West. So, I feel that the OPP do a very good job of trying to make sure that they do keep these numbers low as possible, but again, it is going to be a huge and a hard hit on us on the taxes, and I do hope that the province takes a look at it and see if there's something else that they can do instead of hitting us in our property taxes.
Yeah, thank you. I don't disagree with you. I think they're doing an excellent job for us, and we have the complement of officers that are required in the city, so that's a big plus. Many places don't have the officers that they require, so. Yeah. And I think that's due to the leaders we have, and I thank them very much. So, Councillor Boyce.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, it was so unrealistic the last couple of years to see the 1%, and I'm glad that Councillor Stedall publicly made that, what the true reflection is about it being held back for a couple of years. But I mean, coming from a municipality that had its own police services and then coming to an OPP service, I can tell you quite confidently that I am extremely happy with our OPP. We get the service exactly that I believe we require. So, I mean, although it's a hard thing to swallow, and I know that there is a reserve that once it comes to budget, we'll be able to talk about perhaps implementing part of that fund to help soothe it a bit. But I mean, I'm happy with our current level.
Thank you. Councillor Sharp.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I want to speak to this too because it's such a significant increase. And I agree, and I agree with Councillor Stedall and Councillor Boyce, that our OPP service is excellent. The concern here is the billing that was done and the timing, and I'm really glad, Mr. Mayor, that you've been trying to address that. Likely nothing can be done, as Councillor Stedall said, it's throughout Ontario. But I do think it's important to note we have great OPP service. This is just one of those billing situations that they should have been dealing with this, every year, and now we're getting this hit. So I just think that's important to say.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, all in favor of that motion? I guess that's what I need to know. Thank you. Carried. Okay. Next one is resolution staff report by Director Denouden regarding OCIF allocation be received. Move in a second for this one, please. Councillor Card moved, seconded by Councillor O'Neill. Comments or questions? All in favor? Thank you very much. Carried. Move to the next page. I'm at correspondence, printed information, and non-printed. I need to move in a seconder for this one. Sorry. Councillor Freeman, thank you. Moved it. Thank you very much. Seconded by Councillor McHugh. Thank you. Comments or questions? Printed, non-printed. Councillor O'Neill.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As previously stated, I was quite disappointed with the Quinte Conservation report. It didn't list the overall increase. It didn't list the increase for Quinte West. There are lots of pages, but it didn't give information that we should have had.
Okay, thank you. Anybody
And it was a double-digit increase 2 years in a row.
Yeah. Okay, we have committee members. Councillor Quinte, I think you sit on that. Any comments at this time, or?
I believe when the director, Quinte Conservation, sent in his report, he also included a letter to the staff asking for any feedback. And I don't have the percentage off the top of my head, but Quinte West is a smaller portion of the overall increase just because of how the square mileage or square kilometer per square kilometer rate works out. So I can get that information for you, Councillor O'Neill.
Well, yeah, you get it for, or work with
yes, of course,
staff and get it for all of us. Okay, thank you very much. Anything else? Anything else? Okay, all in favor of the printed and non-printed? I guess, did I get a mover and a seconder, or did I? Okay, so we're good. That's carried. All right, then we're at, I think we're at new business. Any other business? Any new, Councillor Armstrong?
With Remembrance Day just around
Yes,
the
thank you.
corner. I know the mayor just was pinned the other day at the Legion, I guess they were telling me that. I was there today to pick up mine. Also, they're looking for people to distribute the poppies. But technically, they don't sell them, it's a donation, so I guess the word distributor. They're looking for them. If you want to help, you can go down to the Legion and check the schedule out. Remembrance Day signs, I purchased one for myself. They're $20. They're available there for your lawn. Candlelight vigil candles are $10, which can be purchased there. And also, I think probably a number of us have been inundated with messages about looking at the Remembrance Day crosswalk that was put in Stony Creek.
That's a good one.
And it's a great one. My suggestion is if we did it, have it at the Cenotaph crossing, maybe two to go to the Legion, something like that. That'd be my suggestion, but it's something to consider.
Yeah, thank you. We will. We'll ask.
When it's time.
Yes.
Budget.
Thank you. Councillor McHugh.
Yeah, question at this time, we skipped over, I know it's new business, but we skipped over announcements. Would this be an appropriate time for some announcements? Good news announcements?
Sure. Yeah, well, okay.
Wonderful, and I'll start out, I have some neighborly announcements. Two gentlemen to my left, our good and faithful counselor, Jim Ellier, and his lovely wife Patricia are celebrating 61 years of marriage today, so I think she deserves a medal. And also, another neighbor, Greg King, Senior Fire Prevention Officer. As you know, he's been doing for about 25 years, competing in fire fit championships and that. And he just came back from Nashville, Tennessee, where he competed in the World's Firefighter Championships. Individually, he finished fourth. He got a bronze in a relay team. He put together a team of 4 or 5 Canadians, and they won gold. They're world champions, so congratulations to him. And I think there'll be a presentation in the spring that hope to bring Firefit possibly back for Canada Day here again next year, and it's always been a big hit. So congratulations to Greg and to James and Patricia. Oh, yeah.
This gentleman here, in
No, I'm not.
in another week or so, he's going to be.
I'm not as old as you
21?
are. You and I are older than dirt, and I think you're just a bit older.
Yeah, right, yeah. Yeah, we're both very fortunate. Our wives are still willing to come with us to various events, so we're very fortunate.
They deserve a medal for putting up with us all this year.
Thank you, yes, that's good, thank you, yeah, I agree, thank you very much. Anything else, any other good news? I guess that's, Scott, Councillor Sharp, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to advise on behalf of the Accessibility Committee that we are looking for individuals and businesses or organizations that are committed to making Quinte West accessible for all. Nominations for the Accessibility Award are November 22nd. So there's a new awards that are going to be presented on Accessibility Day in December. And so we are looking for nominations. The information is on our website for the Accessibility Awards. Deadline, November 22nd. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I do have another point that's good news, and that is that the Murray Canal Bridge, I'm told, is going to be repaired. And if you have any ability to contact MP Williams or MP Garrettson, encourage them to not just repair it, but replace it. Because the last time they repaired that bridge, I believe they put it back in place, and it's narrower than it was prior to the repair. And the bridge on 33 is narrower than the bridge on 64. And we really need the federal government to realize that that bridge needs to be wider. And that would allow, I think, encourage the province and the city of Quinte West to make the Wooler Road 4 lanes instead of 2. And that would be a real bonus for all of us. So that's my information, and I hope that I'm telling you the truth. I can't confirm it, but I did get enough information that it's realistic. So thank you very much. Anything else that Councillor Card?
Thank you, Your Worship. I had an announcement and a new business announcement. I just wanted to give credit where credit is due for the Chambers of Commerce putting on a great business awards. Last week, there were, I believe, 7 winners from Quinte West, so it was great to see. I did want to also mention just that I have a notice of motion coming to the next council meeting. I know that separate from the DC charges issue that you may have some disagreement on council, but I think everyone wants to see certainly this municipality as competitive for home building as we possibly can. And I just have, further to my comments at the last meeting, there's an agreement. I'm going to ask for staff to work with QHBA for an agreement update, if there's any ways that we can work with them to update the agreement and kind of further incentivize home building, if there's any things that we can do for them on, anyway, to bring that back to council. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't believe we as council have ever discussed the widening of Willow Road to 4 lanes, and I'm confused as to why it's always being brought up.
I'm actually the one, and it has been discussed by council prior to the last term. Yes, it was, and it's been an issue as far as I think, in terms if you spend any time on that Willow Road on the weekends and on the holidays in particular, that it's a traffic jam, and I know the bridge is a big issue. So that's where I'm coming from. Now, if I'm totally incorrect and wrong, we won't do it, but
I travel it all the time, and I think there's more projects that need to be done than widening Willow Road to 4 lanes.
Thank you. Okay, that's good. Anything else? Anything else? Any other, Councillor Quinte?
When we passed the printed and non-printed information, have we already done the bylaws? Did we do that as well? That's the next item, because that's where the development charges is. I was just clarifying. Thank you.
Councillor Steno.
Clarification too, in the next part, when we do the bylaws, can we talk about the development charges and the water rates separately, not pass them together?
We can do it, yes. We can do it separately, no problem. Yeah, that's fine. So where do you want to start? Which one do you want to start? We got bylaws in front of me, and the first one is being a bylaw to establish development charges for the Corporation of City of Quinte West. So do you want to start, need a mover and a seconder, and then we could discuss it and decide what you're going to do.
And I'd like a recorded vote on whatever direction you're going to go, Your Worship.
All right, thank you. That's fine. That's fine. Councillor Card moves, seconded by, I need a seconder, Councillor Armstrong. Okay, go ahead. Who's first? What do you want to do? Tell me.
Mr. Mayor, I wanted to speak to it.
Go ahead.
I didn't speak
Go ahead,
to it.
Councillor Sharp.
Thank
Go
you. I
ahead.
didn't speak to it earlier. I think most of the council members have spoken to this. And it is very difficult, and it is very high. But I know that we started this process in April, and we've had stakeholder meetings. We've had stakeholder input, and we did extend it at one point. I think it came to us in July or August. And we heard that we needed more time, and that was given. Now, there's a request for additional time. When it went back, as I understand, staff and the consultant and stakeholders did look at all the projects, and there was a change, but I admit it wasn't very much. But it did come back, and you know, the key for us as a city, we have to make sure we have our part in there, which is part of our planning for asset management and the part that's growth related that we have to pay for, our piece in there. And what I'm seeing is we're planning to do so. And it's very difficult, and I just had to speak to it because I want you to know where I stand, and I said that earlier. We gave that extra time, and now it's going to be more time. We do have incentives, and I like Councillor Card is working on a potential notice of motion. We do have incentives and plans under our affordable housing for projects. We also, through the DC's, through the province, there are, I guess, incentives there as well to build affordable housing, and I don't want that to get lost in this, that we haven't given up our projects and our incentives with our working group for affordable housing. So I will be voting for it. I understand it could go back and this 30,000 is being suggested, or what's affordable to the developers, maybe 32 in this. But this came to us with all of those projects and percentages and the detail. And so that, and it was done a couple times. So I just have to stay with my original vote. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Boyce.
Okay, Your Worship, I asked a couple key questions tonight, a couple to Director Denouden, because I've gone back and forth on this particular issue, and you know, when it comes to, I don't mind debt. Everybody's in debt to some degree, but where will we, you know, how many projects are actually going to be able to be done and not exceed a reasonable amount of debt? And I want to go back to our CAO and ask them, 1 month, we sit down with the developers and we hash it out, we discuss the figures, we look at it realistically in the projects that, are they going to get done in a time frame that won't put us in such a critical stage, and I'm not talking water and wastewater, that's separate, but other capital growth projects. What will it cost us to discuss with them 1 more month? With meaningful when they know, you know, they'll do their homework, we'll do our homework, and we'll come back.
I guess to answer the question, in my opinion, we've had a lot of dialogue. We've looked at all these projects. And as I mentioned before, to go back and potentially remove projects is going to have a limiting factor on the amount of growth we're going to have. And then we're going to have to reduce the growth number, or the growth forecast, and quite honestly, then we're going to end up pretty much at the same number. So I guess my struggle with that suggestion is that I feel all we're doing is postponing the decision that council has to make here for a month, and we're going to be basically back here with the same decision in front of council as we have tonight. And I think based on some of the calculations we've done, we're looking at $300,000 to $350,000 a month potentially that we would be out in revenue for each month we defer the implementation.
But my concern is that we will get to such a debt ratio that it'll just be astronomical. And so, I mean, there has to be some projects that we need to take a tougher look at and say, you know what, those are nice projects to have, but we simply cannot do them. My fear, and I was in a municipality that we collected money, and then there was a concern with, we had a big chunk of money that just sat there, and I would rather see that money sitting in people's pockets, to be quite honest with you, rather than being in a reserve that we, quite frankly, may not use. So that's my concern, and I think the debt ratio perhaps may outweigh the whether or not we do it today or not.
If I can, Mr. Mayor, through to Councillor Boyce, just in terms of the debt, or in terms of the reserve, I feel very confident in saying that with the number of projects we know we have to do in the very near future, we are not going to be running up massive reserve balances. I think some of the projections that staff have put in front of council and in conjunction with the consultant shows that we are potentially not going to have enough money to even cover the debt we need to take on for some of these projects over the next 4 or 5 years. So I'm very confident in saying we're not going to have a huge reserve balance anytime soon in the development charges area.
Thank you. Anybody else? Any other comments? Okay.
Mr.
Called
Mayor.
for a recorded vote on the motion.
So the motion on the floor is to pass the bylaw as it's presented.
Right.
Councillor Ellier.
No.
Councillor Armstrong.
Yes.
Councillor Boyce.
No.
Councillor Card.
Yes.
Councillor Freeman. Councillor Kotsavos.
No.
Councillor Quinte.
No.
Councillor McHugh.
Yes.
Councillor O'Neill.
Yes.
Councillor Reed.
Yes.
Councillor Sharp.
Yes.
Councillor Stedall.
Yes.
Mayor Harrison.
Yes.
9 yeas and 4 noes.
Motion's carried. Thank you very much. Okay, next one is a bylaw to establish water and wastewater rates for the City of Quinte West Municipal Enterprise. Need a mover and a seconder for this. Councilor McHugh moves, Councilor Kotsavos seconds. Questions or comments? Questions or comments on this one? All in favor? Carried, thank you. And the next, I guess the next one is said bylaws now being read and passed and mayor and clerk be signed. So I need a mover and a seconder for this. Councilor McHugh moves, seconder, Councilor Freeman, are you seconding this? Thank you. Your hand's up, so we'll take it. Okay, any other questions or comments? Anyone else? All in favor? Carried, thank you. Next is confirmation bylaw. Mover and a seconder for confirmation bylaw. Please, mover and a seconder. Somebody's got to do. Councilor Ellier moves, seconded by Councilor Armstrong. Okay, all in favor? Carried, you can pick 2 for adjournment. Thank you very much. We're good, thank you.